I am a teacher at Columbine High School. There is a student here with a gun.
He's inside the school shooting at the gun!
Well, I had to do it because somebody had to do something.
After shooting in the theater, I didn't have a plan of whether to die or not.
Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you're a returning viewer. Today's video will be yet another redo of one of my earliest videos, this time being over 9 times in length. This video alone took over 3 weeks of non-stop work, with easily over 150 hours of research, writing, and editing put into it. So I truly hope you find it to be interesting to watch. Please make sure to like and leave a comment so that this video can be shared with more people. Also, please make sure to subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos like this in the future. I'd like to remind you that you can gain access to perks by joining my membership. To do so, please hit the join button below, or follow the link in the description or pinned comment. Due to the length of this video, I could not include every single detail of this case. As always, I did my best to gather accurate and complete information, though there were many conflicting reports. With that being said, this video dives deep into the life of the shooter leading up to his attack. If you aren't interested in hearing about his very troubled and bizarre life, you can skip straight to the incident, at the time shown on screen now. With all of that out of the way, let's jump right into today's video. Adam Peter Lanza was born on April 22, 1992, to his parents Peter and Nancy. The couple already had another son named Ryan, who was 4 years old at the time of Adam's birth. Nancy's pregnancy with Adam was filled with challenges, with some including hypoglycemia, hypotension, and decreased fetal movement, which ultimately turned into a plan for him to be delivered by C-section. Anyway, his family of 4 lived in New Hampshire for the first chunk of Adam's childhood. During this time, he was said to have been a very energetic and creative kid, who reportedly made up his own language, which is kind of ironic since, as I'll soon explain, his language skills were lacking. But as a very young child, he also faced some pretty harsh difficulties. Adam reportedly struggled with developmental challenges before even reaching the age of 3 years old. These issues included communication and sensory difficulties, as well as socialization delays. According to a report later released by the Connecticut office of the Child Advocate, detailing Adam's life and what went wrong, his speech and language skills were behind what they should have been at his age. He was evaluated before he turned 3 years old due to concerns of his language delays. This evaluation concluded that Adam presented, quote, significantly delayed development of articulation and expressive language skills, unquote. Despite these negative aspects, Adam was noted as having a great attention span, a good ability to follow directions, as well as a very creative skill set. Around this time, Adam was a part of a local Cub Scout group. His mother, Nancy, would attend every meeting with him, and she would befriend the parents of the other kids in the group. She and one of these other parents, Marvin LaFontaine, ended up growing quite close and became good friends. Marvin later recalled that he noticed Adam was a bit of a strange kid, noting that he was particularly quiet. According to Marvin, Nancy warned him to never touch Adam in any way, not even a pat on the back, which Marvin had absolutely no problem with. He recalled that when other kids touched young Adam, he would become really upset, with physical contact clearly being a trigger for him. Adam had a massive aversion to any form of touch and hated to be hugged, kissed, or held. I also read that because of this aversion, he would sometimes refuse to wear clothes. Jumping back into his learning disabilities, Adam began preschool in 1995. Because of the struggles that Adam faced regarding his language skills, he was referred to and enrolled in special preschool education, which was recommended by his IEP, or Individualized Education Plan, following the earlier evaluation. During this year, Adam had speech support and also underwent occupational therapy. Apparently, towards the end of the school year, Adam was taken out of the special education classes after the school district determined that his struggles wouldn't interfere with his normal learning. Adam's parents did not agree with this decision and took him to be evaluated once again, this time by an independent hospital. Though it was concluded that parts of Adam's language skills were indeed on track, it was recommended that he begin the special education once again to help in other areas in which he was lacking. His unusual tendencies were also noted during this time. As mentioned before, Adam absolutely hated any form of physical contact, and this also extended to coming into contact with certain textures. He would reportedly throw massive temper tantrums and was even observed hitting his head several times during some of these episodes. Accompanying the previously mentioned issues and behaviors, Adam also struggled to work in groups, had sensitivity to some smells, had light sensitivities, and also had problems with repetitive behaviors, which I will explain a little later on in the video. In this evaluation, it was also observed that Adam was an extremely active child and rarely slept throughout the night. In May of 1997, when Adam was 5 years old, it's reported that the school district performed another developmental assessment on him. This assessment brought to light that Adam had a huge discrepancy between his expressive and receptive language abilities. It was discovered that Adam was far more likely to understand something versus being able to communicate it. Although it's reported that he had problems with auditory memory and processing, which meant that he had difficulty when taking in information inauditorily, his speech and language support resumed, mainly focusing on improving his ability to use expressive language. It was sometime around here that Adam first began to notice that people were unable to understand him clearly, which seemed to have affected him negatively, and he reportedly began to rely on a classmate to communicate for him. It was at a very early age that Adam was introduced to firearms. His mother Nancy was a proud gun owner and did not shy away from sharing this hobby with her kids. I read that he may have first learned how to shoot in the Cub Scouts. However, I am not completely sure about that. Regardless, he was undoubtedly very young when he picked up a gun for the first time. Through my research, I was unable to find exactly when Adam first shot a gun, but I did find that he and his mom, along with his older brother Ryan, would go to Marvin LaFontaine's property to shoot guns on a makeshift range. Marvin later stated that Adam was very comfortable shooting firearms at just 4 years old. He also said that it was clear that even at such a young age, Adam loved the feeling of a gun in his hands and really enjoyed target practice. As far as I could tell, the Lanzas often hung out with the LaFontaine family. I did read that Peter wasn't one to join them very often, so it was usually just Nancy and the kids. That changed in 1998 though, when the Lanzas made the move from New Hampshire to Connecticut after the father of the family, Peter, got a job with General Electric. Once there, they settled into a beautiful home in Newtown, Connecticut. After the move, Nancy did not find a job. She instead focused on raising the 2 young boys and taking care of the home. It is apparent that Nancy and Peter's marriage was in a rough spot during this time. Numerous emails from Nancy to her friend Marvin, as well as other friends, paint the picture that Peter was working every waking minute of his life. Apparently, he would arrive home after both of their kids had already gone to bed and would leave the house for work before the kids woke up the next day. In these emails, Nancy also complained that Peter was growing distant and would work up to 16 hours some days. She also apparently mentioned in these emails that this was not the only problem they were having. She also stated that Peter didn't want to share the responsibility of the day-to-day tasks. Instead, according to her, he wanted only to work and then do fun things with the kids on the weekends. Peter later confirmed this, stating he was essentially a weekend father. After their move, Adam began first grade at Sandy Hook Elementary School in September of 1998. The school was located less than 10 minutes away from their home, which was ideal for a family with 2 young children. I am unsure about what school Adam's brother Ryan attended at this time, but seeing as he was only 4 years older than Adam, he would have probably been in 5th grade, so it's possible that the 2 of them attended Sandy Hook Elementary School together. According to the Connecticut Office of the Child Advocate, or as I will now refer to it as the OCA's report, Adam was put onto another IEP and continued receiving speech and language assistance at his new school. He apparently received about an hour of support weekly, which some claim was not enough. Despite the continued issues with his speech and language skills, he was, however, apparently reading at grade level and excelled in math. His main struggles were with writing and verbal communication. He was also having issues with his motor skills, such as tying his shoes and zipping his jacket. Adam was still undergoing occupational therapy, mainly to help improve his motor skills. His mom presented the idea that he may have a seizure disorder, which to my knowledge was never determined to be true or false. Some of the teachers that came into contact with Adam later stated that he was sometimes reluctant to participate in activities with others, but some actually recalled that he made many friends after starting at the school. He was described as respectful, but it was also noted that he rarely took initiative and needed to be pushed to participate. His father, Peter, later reported that despite these difficulties, Adam seemed to be very happy during this time in his life. Even though he faced challenges with socializing in the years prior, Adam was apparently able to be socially involved with his classmates at this age. He participated in school activities, was a part of a baseball team, attended Boy Scouts, and also performed in school plays. It was later reported by Adam himself that he never enjoyed any of this, and that the only reason he did any of these things was to make his parents happy. Adam was also still very creative during this time, often making up complex games to play with his brother or father. Together, they would also build Lego sets, which Adam loved to do. It's reported that sometime in 1999, Nancy Lanza was allegedly facing some pretty serious health problems, which seemed to take up a lot of her attention. In emails sent to friends around this time, Nancy apparently claimed some troubling things. At first, she was not super worried about it, but as time went on, her emails grew darker and more concerning. She referenced having multiple tests done on her, and later claimed that it didn't look like she was going to survive. She would say that she only had limited time left to live, as little as a few months. In these emails, Nancy asked the recipients to keep her diagnosis confidential because she did not want to worry her family. She told at least one friend that she was diagnosed with a, quote, genetically flawed autoimmune disorder, unquote. Later emails further painted a severely worrisome picture that she wasn't going to live much longer. She mentioned experiencing seizures and being subjected to many more painful tests. She wrote about being, quote, poked, prodded, injected, and tortured, unquote. Nancy also wrote that her doctors were preparing her for the worst-case scenario, and that she was very worried about what Adam and Ryan were going to do after she was gone. According to some reports and sources, there was never any record of her being seriously ill. Apparently, she did indeed have tests done, but the results came back unremarkable. It is also reported that Nancy was possibly previously diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, but again, sources differ on whether this is actually true or not. Some speculate that she was under a lot of stress due to her marriage, which may have contributed to a potentially made-up claim. There is more information regarding this topic, but ultimately, I want to focus on Adam. But I'd still like to hear your guys' thoughts on this strange part of the case. Anyway, let's get back to Adam. His challenges continued as he progressed through elementary school, and he was eventually diagnosed with a sensory processing disorder in 1997, which is a common characteristic of autism. It is a condition in which the brain has trouble receiving and responding to information that comes in through the senses. Throughout the next few years, Adam continued to face the same hindrances, although it's reported that as time went on, his speech skills were improving. Some of his teachers still described him as timid and unable to initiate conversations. In 4th grade, however, it is reported that Adam met all of his speech goals, which was a really big milestone for him. He was subsequently taken out of the special education classes. The later report by the OCA stated that this decision was based on the fact that Adam had, quote, no error sounds, unquote. According to the report, Adam still struggled with communicating his feelings, and it's speculated that he should have continued at least part of the extra support classes, but he didn't. Adam still exhibited behaviors that Nancy wanted to address in the following school year. In May of 2001, Nancy wrote to the school, expressing her desire to have Adam placed in a carefully considered position. The letter reads, quote, Adam is a quiet, considerate child with a tendency to withdraw. He has made tremendous strides in your school system and has benefited from speech therapy. He does, however, tend to overfocus on rules and can be very hard on himself as a result. This year has been a challenge due, in part, to a slight mismatch in teacher style and student style. I would like to take a moment to praise Blank's recognition of this problem, as well as her efforts to resolve the issue. I realize the difficulty of modifying a classroom approach to accommodate an individual. Blank also has been very helpful in keeping Adam's stress level at a minimum. I am hoping that next year Adam will be placed in a classroom with a more casual feel to it. He responds well to a nurturing environment, and I would like his emphasis to be on learning rather than coping. He focuses on his work, enjoys structure, and always adheres to the rules. But a certain level of strictness seems to bring on anxiety and depression. I have appreciated Blank's willingness to work with me on this issue. I believe that if Adam is matched to the right environment for his particular learning style, the process could be less teacher-intensive. That would free Adam up to enjoy the learning process with a better result for everyone." Unquote. As I will explain later in this video, Nancy had a tendency to accommodate Adam's particular needs, even into adulthood. I think that this letter is possibly at the start of her habit to shift Adam's environment to be more suited to his needs. According to reports, Peter and Nancy separated when Adam was 9 years old. Peter reportedly moved out of the house and into an apartment located in Stamford, which was about an hour away from Newtown. Though not living with them, he continued to support Nancy and the kids financially, since Nancy did not work at this time. Both parents shared custody of Adam and his older brother Ryan, but the two of them primarily stayed with Nancy in the home that they moved to 4 years prior. Peter later stated that he did not feel like their separation affected the kids in a negative way, because he would come to visit them often, and they saw him about as much as they did when he lived at the house anyway. Adam transferred from Sandy Hook Elementary School to Reed Intermediate School for 5th and 6th grade. It isn't known if he transferred at the beginning of the year or partway into it. According to the records from this school, Adam was doing well for the most part and made a good effort in his class, but he still reportedly struggled with verbally communicating with people. He was still very non-social and continued to have a hard time initiating conversations, like mentioned before. It was also said that he began to act much more timid around others, even exhibiting behaviors such as avoiding eye contact. In 5th grade, Adam and a classmate wrote a very strange and concerning book for a school project that was possibly never turned in. The two boys named it The Big Book of Granny. This very strange fictional writing was filled with violence, cannibalism, and murder. The story had 4 main parts, and I will explain them each a little bit. In part 1, 85 jokes were written down, each of them being a degrading statement, beginning with the word granny. The second part was filled with imaginary products, such as a quote, "Granny action figure," and "Granny oats," unquote. Each product had a price tag, and there was even a phone number listed specifically for ordering. The third part of this book was titled, quote, "Granny's Clubhouse of Happy Children," unquote, and was written in dialogue fashion about an imaginary TV show. The TV show starred Granny, her son, who went by the name of Bobalicious, and several children as characters. In this section of the book, both Granny and Bobalicious were drawn speaking to a large group of children. Official reports describe this part of the book, quote, "In the first episode, Granny punches one boy in the face, throws a match and causes an explosion and threatens to shoot and kill the children. The second episode, Granny's Clubhouse of Happy Children 2, starts out with Bobalicious speaking to the children. Bobalicious said, 'Hi, I'm Bobalicious the Explorer. Remember last time when everyone was slaughtered? Well, you bread-brain leeches gave me 75 years in prison for that so-called tragedy. I was having fun.' The third and final episode, Granny's Clubhouse of Happy Children 3, introduces 2 new characters, Dora the Berserker and her monkey, Shoes. Bobalicious says that they are going to play a game of hide and go die," unquote. The fourth and final part of the book was called, quote, "Adventures of Granny," unquote. This section consisted of several different bizarre scenarios. They included a bank robbery where everyone inside got blown up, one where Granny's son sunk her to the bottom of the ocean, and another where Granny's son kidnapped a little boy before eventually throwing him in a fireplace. The little boy ended up being shot and killed by a Granny action figure. At the end of this scenario, it is implied that Granny ate the child's feet. The section goes on, with different scenes primarily including Granny and her son, all of which are strange to say the least. Most of it was very violent in nature, including many instances of pain and death. The report later published by the OCA regarding Adam's life and what went wrong touches on this. Part of the report reads, quote, "The Big Book of Granny suggests that while in many ways Adam appeared to be positively developing, By the age of 10, on some level, he was deeply troubled by feelings of rage, hate, and at least unconscious murderous impulses. While many children, and especially boys of this age, contend with anger and violent impulses in their play and creative productions, The Big Book of Granny stands out to mental health professionals as a text marked by extreme thoughts of violence that should have signified a need for intervention and evaluation, unquote. The report also reads, quote, "There is intense violence featured in this book, and authors conclude that it was not the sort of creation that most children would even know to invent." Mental health professionals contributing to this report determined that the content of The Big Book of Granny can only be described as extremely abhorrent, and if it had been carefully reviewed by school staff, it would have suggested the need for a referral to a child psychiatrist or other mental health professional for evaluation. An appropriate evaluation would have required extended discussion with the child about what the book meant and how it came to be written, by encouraging extensive elaboration about what the text revealed regarding the child's thoughts and social-emotional processing, unquote. Unfortunately, it is unclear if this book was ever seen by the school, but it is known that nothing ever came of it if it was, which is a massive shame. You can only wonder if this was the start to Adam's violent thoughts, and what could have been done to prevent the later tragedy if he was evaluated and treated at this point in his life. During later interviews, Peter Lanza claimed that between the ages of 11 and 12, Adam's demeanor shifted rapidly. As far as Peter could tell, Adam became less happy, as well as more anxious and frustrated, but did not seem to be growing angry or aggressive. He apparently became easily overwhelmed and had trouble concentrating. Peter also stated that Adam started to experience severe panic attacks at this time. Despite this observation by Peter, Adam continued to do well in school and was remembered as bright and creative by some teachers. After the 6th grade, Adam began to attend Newtown Middle School, where he started 7th grade. It's noted that during this school year, his social, emotional, and communicative issues increased aggressively. Some speculate that this was the result of higher levels of stress, due to Adam being in a completely different environment than before. He was used to the style of elementary school, where children generally stuck with one class all day. In middle school, however, students have a very different experience. Instead of being in one class, students have a bit more freedom and are responsible for attending multiple classes in different areas of the school. As mentioned earlier by his mother, Adam did well with strict structure, so it's not hard to imagine this new style of learning did not sit well with him. Nancy noticed that his anxiety increased around this time, and she of course attributed this to stress caused by the new environment of Newtown Middle School. Because of this, near the end of the school year, Nancy had Adam transferred to a Catholic school called St. Rose of Lima for the 4th quarter of 7th grade. During his short time here, Adam was sticking out to the teachers due to his strange behavior. One of his teachers later stated, quote, "After my years of experience teaching 7th grade boys, I know how they are supposed to act. But I saw Adam as being not normal with very distinct antisocial issues. Adam was a very intelligent boy, but he was also very quiet, barely spoke, and never responded to his classmates' kindness of trying to help him fit in. I also remember Adam never wanting to participate in anything. I truly do not believe that Adam's parents were upfront with teachers about Adam's mental capacities," unquote. The teacher then explained a concerning incident, quote, "I remember giving creative writing assignments to students, instructing them to write a page or two on whatever they wanted to talk about. Adam would write 10 pages obsessing about battles, destruction, and war. I have known 7th grade boys to talk about things like this, but Adam's level of violence was disturbing. I remember showing the writings to the principal at the time. Adam's creative writing was so graphic that it could not be shared," unquote. Despite his teacher obviously being concerned, there is no evidence to point to any action being taken as a result. There isn't even an indication that Adam's parents were informed of this writing assignment. Instead, Adam was asked to complete another paper on something less violent, which he apparently did with no issues. His teacher stated, quote, "I remember instructing Adam that he had to write something else to share. So instead, he wrote a poem that, from what I recall, was beautiful. Adam shared his poem in public with his father present, who was in tears. I believe his father was in tears because he never heard Adam recite anything that nice before, and the surprising fact was that he was able to deliver the poem in public." Unquote. It was just 8 weeks after starting at St. Rose of Lima that Adam was taken out of the school by his parents near the end of the school year, and it's reported that he was kept home for the remaining time of 7th grade. In September of 2005, the now 13-year-old Adam began 8th grade back at Newtown Middle School. Later that month, Adam was taken to the doctors. Nancy brought up her concerns regarding Adam not sleeping well at night, but rather sleeping a lot during the daytime. Another thing that was brought to attention was that Adam had stopped eating well. When doctors weighed and measured him, he was 5 feet 8 inches tall and only weighed 98 pounds. Adam had already been seen by doctors numerous times this same year for sore throats, difficulty breathing, and marked weight loss. There are apparently no records showing that he had any follow-up blood work or visits to find the underlying cause of these symptoms. A few days after he was last taken to the doctors, Nancy Lanza brought Adam to the emergency room, requesting a crisis evaluation to be performed on him. She explained how Adam had been lately. She stated that he'd been having issues with school, trouble in groups, and was showing signs of repetitive behaviors which in the recent days had apparently become more prevalent. During this evaluation, Nancy discussed her fear that Adam was showing the beginning signs of autism. She did not believe at this time that Adam was taking drugs, or that he was either suicidal or homicidal. The hospital records from this time reveal that Adam was presenting with anxious, agitated, and withdrawn behavior. According to the OCA's report, following this checkup, 13-year-old Adam was diagnosed with anxiety disorder, Asperger's syndrome, and obsessive-compulsive disorder. Following all of this, Nancy reportedly declined to have an extensive medical workup performed on Adam, stating that in 3 weeks, he had an appointment to meet with a psychiatrist. The hospital still recommended therapeutic support and additional evaluations for Adam, but sadly, Nancy Lanza totally blew this suggestion off as well. She apparently stated that Adam would be better off at home, where he was more comfortable and less stressed. The hospital once again recommended that Adam receive additional help, namely a therapeutic educational placement at the Center for Child and Adolescent Treatment Services. Unsurprisingly, Nancy declined this referral as well. But before they left the hospital, Nancy requested a doctor's note to excuse Adam from school due to his anxiety, stating that this was the sole reason for bringing him to be looked at in the first place. The hospital staff agreed and wrote him a note to excuse him from school for 3 days. This wasn't enough for them, though, as it appears Nancy attempted to obtain a longer excuse of absence through a pediatrician, until Adam was able to be later seen by the psychiatrist. Sometime after this crisis evaluation, Nancy met with the administrator in their district and made it clear that she wanted to homeschool Adam at this point. She brought up the recent evaluation as proof of his need to be homeschooled due to his severe anxiety. The administrator apparently did not agree that homeschooling Adam would be the best fit, so they instead recommended finding an unconventional plan to meet Adam's needs, which I will touch on in a little bit. Following Adam's Asperger's syndrome diagnosis, his father, Peter, apparently began to research education options and even attended a meeting of the Global and Regional Asperger's Syndrome Partnership to discover and explore additional options for his son. I'm unsure if Peter ever found anything, or if any action ever came out of this. Like stated before, Nancy and Adam later met with the community psychiatrist, Dr. Paul Fox, who also diagnosed Adam with Asperger's syndrome, and stated that Adam showed signs of significant social impairments along with extreme anxiety. It seems as though Adam continued to see Dr. Fox for quite some time, as billing records document at least 20 payments to him from the Lanza family between November 15, 2005, and July of 2007. It is reported that Dr. Fox met with Adam's school to talk about his special education needs, though I was unable to find any details about this. Dr. Fox later stated that neither Adam nor Nancy had any intention of utilizing medication to alleviate Adam's symptoms. None of Adam's treatment records through this doctor are available because they were reportedly destroyed at some point. So, it's unfortunately impossible to know exactly how Adam's treatment was going during this time. Anyway, back to late 2005, when Adam first began to see Dr. Fox. Nancy was persistent on homeschooling Adam, which Dr. Fox actually agreed would be best. I just want to quickly throw in that there is no indication that Adam was bullied at any time throughout his school years. I wanted to mention it in case anyone thought that might be a factor as to why Nancy wanted him to be pulled out of school. According to sources and reports, the reason stated over and over for not wanting Adam to attend school was his severe anxiety. It's important to note that both clinical and educational professionals later agreed that Dr. Fox's agreement in this was completely inappropriate and unhelpful for Adam's needs. Nancy finally got her wish, as she ended up receiving a note from Dr. Fox, excusing Adam from attending public school indefinitely. The note stated that Adam should, quote, not attend school due to the lack of an appropriate placement, unquote, and his, quote, mounting overwhelming anxiety, unquote. Dr. Fox continued, stating, quote, Adam Lanza has agreed to achieve competency in all academic subjects at home. At this point, tutoring is not needed and could be viewed as counterproductive both academically and emotionally, unquote. It's important to note that it's unclear why Dr. Fox thought this would be the best course of action, when so many others seem to disagree. According to the later report published by the OCA, an IEP meeting was scheduled for December of 2005, and there was an offer to have Adam evaluated once again. Nancy, of course, declined this, and she stated that evaluations at this time would, quote, not be in Adam's best interests, unquote. It was following this meeting that an agreement was finally met, and Adam was placed on homebound status, a program reserved for students that were unable to physically attend school full-time due to their disabilities, even with the modifications and added support available. Many speculate that at this time, though he was supposed to be receiving tutoring at home from his mother or father, he actually was not. Although Adam was entitled to receive 10 hours per week of tutoring from the school district, there's also no indication that he ever did. There is a lot of speculation that him being pulled out of school at this time contributed to his later isolation from the world. In any case, I'm sure that Adam's family did not understand the detrimental effects of separating him from his peers at this point, or what it could cause later down the line. Anyway, paired with his schooling troubles, at this time, Adam was also clearly suffering immensely with other issues completely out of his control. His OCD got so bad that at one point, he reportedly felt the need to change his socks 20 times a day, and he often went through an entire box of tissues daily, because he couldn't bring himself to touch his doorknob or other surfaces with his bare hands. Along with this, Adam also washed his hands an exorbitant number of times, causing them to become raw and extremely sensitive. This remained an issue for him throughout his life. As he grew further into his teenage years, Adam only went further downhill. It is reported that while Dr. Fox was seeing Adam, he strongly urged him to take an anti-anxiety medication, but, unsurprisingly, Adam refused. Now in high school, Adam was introduced back into the public education system for 9th grade, which he attended Newtown High School for in 2006. His reintroduction was taken very slowly, in order to ease him back into the system. According to many reports, Adam seemed to be doing well in school at this time, but still reportedly struggled with his OCD, anxiety, sensory issues, and Asperger's syndrome. Adam was still on an IEP at this time, and it was determined that he still had difficulty communicating with others, which was impacting his ability to participate in a normal educational environment. As far as I could tell, Adam mainly worked one-on-one with tutors at this time, and wasn't really a part of a typical class setting. Despite getting extra help with his education, Adam was still not improving as much as they hoped for. Though Peter did not live at their home anymore, he later stated that he started to see a shift in Adam. Peter said that he noticed Adam was not as close with his older brother Ryan, like they had been when they were younger. This may be because they were both older and more dependent, but also because Ryan actually moved out of the home to attend college during this year. Also around this time, Peter noticed that Adam grew more socially awkward, and typically chose to spend more and more of his time playing online games such as World of Warcraft. Adam kept a few other hobbies during this time as well, such as writing, hiking, and shooting guns, primarily with his mother. He began to see his father a little less, but would still sometimes visit him at his apartment in Stamford. I am unsure how often Adam would go shooting, but it is reported that both Nancy and Peter would take him to the ranges throughout his lifetime. He was in no way unfamiliar with weapons. From my research, It seems Nancy was a lot more nonchalant in regard to this, and possibly took him more often than his father did. Both of Adam's parents, but Nancy in particular, seemed to not be aware of the dangers that allowing Adam to be around guns so often posed. It's reported that Adam had no restrictions on the firearms, since they were kept in areas that he had full access to. It's clear that as Adam's mental health continued to go downhill, his access to these guns did not diminish or discontinue. This failure would prove to be fatal in the future. Anyway, Adam's father, already noticing the concerning changes in Adam and worried over his dwindling socialization, pushed to get him seen by a specialist to get him treated for his OCD, as it was said to have been impacting the family in a greatly negative way at this time. While he was looking for someone specifically knowledgeable on obsessive-compulsive disorder, Peter also wanted the specialist to be familiar with Asperger's syndrome as well. It is unclear why Peter decided to have Adam looked at by someone else, if he was already being seen by Dr. Fox, but it is reported that Peter had little involvement when it came to Adam's treatment by this doctor. Nancy was on board, but later stated that she wanted any conclusion drawn by this next specialist to be reviewed by Dr. Fox, as he apparently had the best understanding of Adam's complex situation. According to the OCA's report, Nancy acknowledged that Peter had a right to be concerned over Adam's lacking socialization skills. She stated that she had been, quote, more concerned with keeping Adam as comfortable as possible and just getting through each day, unquote. Adam was eventually seen by Dr. Robert King at the Yale Child Study Center on October 24, 2006, when he was just 14 years old. Dr. King's initial report listed Adam as a, quote, pale, gaunt, and awkward young adolescent standing rigidly with downcast gaze and declining to shake hands, unquote. When Nancy told Dr. King that Adam no longer looked people in the eyes, Adam asked, quote, why should I have to, unquote. Dr. King responded, explaining that facial expressions, such as smiling, were important to read while talking to someone. Adam then reportedly said that different people interpreted smiling differently, quote, some primates smile when they are frightened, unquote. Dr. King also noted that Adam displayed avoidant and controlling behaviors. Adam refused to open the doors for himself, as he did not want to touch the doorknobs like previously stated. He also apparently scolded his mother when she leaned on something, as it was not proper. Dr. King also noted that Adam had some food aversions, mainly related to texture, which I will mention again a little later in the video. Along with this, Dr. King also reported that Adam had gone through many changes regarding his ability to socialize, such as no longer talking on the phone, engaging in outdoor activities, and primarily using email to communicate with others. To the doctor, all of these were signs that Adam was extremely reclusive and had socially withdrawn greatly. Dr. King stated that it was difficult to interpret Adam's quick social decline. He did list a possible explanation, which might have been, quote, that social engagement, largely focused on activities, in the middle school years, makes relatively few demands for social sophistication. As Adam's peers moved into early adolescence and middle school, the demands of social engagement changed dramatically, leaving Adam feeling more inadequate or ostracized, setting off a cycle of withdrawal and avoidance, unquote. Dr. King strongly felt that Adam fell somewhere on the pervasive developmental disorder or autism spectrum, but wanted to complete further evaluations to establish a future treatment plan. Dr. King wrote, quote, beyond the impact of OCD symptoms on himself and his mother, we are very concerned about Adam's increasingly constricted social and educational world. Much of emphasis has been on finding curricular level of instruction. Inability to tolerate even minimal interaction with even older, more mature classmates will have grave consequences for his future education and social and occupational adaptation unless means of remediation are found. Inability to interact with classmates will prove increasingly deleterious to education. We believe it is very important to reframe the discussion with school from issues of curricular content to much more urgent issues of how to accommodate Adam's severe social disabilities in a way that would permit him to be around peers and to progress, rather than regress, socially, as well as academically, unquote. Dr. King went on, stating, quote, understandably, Adam's parents have gone to great lengths to compensate for Adam's hypersensitivities and social difficulties and aversions by providing homebound instruction. However, we believe that there is a significant risk to Adam in creating, even with the best of intentions, a prosthetic environment which spares him having to encounter other students or to work to overcome his social difficulties. Having the emphasis on adapting the world to Adam, rather than helping him to adapt to the world, is a recipe for him to be a homebound recluse, unable to attend college or work productively into his 20s and 30s and beyond, with mother becoming increasingly isolated and burdened." Unquote. Following the meeting, Dr. King recommended that Adam be put on medication, as he felt it was a key action that needed to be taken in order for Adam to succeed. He also concluded that Adam needed to be around other kids his age, and mentioned that he likely needed to take advantage of a therapeutic school setting, rather than continuing his education in a normal public school. One day after the meeting with Dr. King, Nancy wrote him an email, which reads, quote, "Thank you for taking the time to meet with Adam yesterday. I wanted to let you know that the options you presented are not going to work at this time. I would like to save you any further investment of your time. As I mentioned during the telephone conversation previous to our meeting, Adam's OCD component is strongly tied to Asperger's syndrome, and he is adamantly opposed to medication. The OCD component is now based on superstition, or in an effort to influence outside events or luck. I thought I had been clear that I was looking for individual intervention, perhaps some sort of behavior modification, for the Asperger's syndrome foremost, sensory integration disorder, and the two OCD-like components that are impacting his ability to attend school. His refusal to take medication would make it impossible for him to be part of the study group and will just further agitate him. He was quite angry about the line of questioning that the interview took. As you might expect from an Asperger child, he had no understanding of the metaphors and was quite disturbed by the fairy godmother scenario you gave him. You mentioned that the wait list for treatment for Asperger is quite lengthy, and that the study group was the alternative. However, participation in a study group, with the implied possibility of medication, will not be helpful in this case. So while I very much appreciate your effort, this is not the right course of treatment for him." Unquote. Just to clarify, I did not read anything that detailed the supposed fairy godmother scenario, so I apologize that I can't give you more context on that. Nancy later stated that she felt Adam was, quote, "being tortured," unquote, through the interview, because he was sweating profusely and looked as though he wanted to cry. She also said that she was not hopeful that the evaluation helped in any way, mentioning that it may have made things with Adam even worse, that he was very angry following the meeting, and also that he may not agree to meet with another doctor for a long time. Dr. King reassured Nancy and told her that there may be other options, and they should be considered. He stated that a Yale Child Study Center advanced practice registered nurse, Dr. Kathleen Koenig, was very knowledgeable on treatment and education plans and would be happy to work with them. Dr. Koenig did end up meeting with Adam, and she described him as, quote, "emotionally paralyzed," unquote. Adam apparently agreed with this observation, but made it clear that he did not feel as though he was suffering because of it. He also reiterated that he was unwilling to take medication to mitigate his condition. Dr. Koenig also noted that Adam was clearly unable to live a normal life due to his ailments. Apparently, during one of his evaluations, Adam had asked specific questions regarding schizophrenia and OCD, and when asked if he was experiencing any symptoms of them, he refused to share if he was or not. Dr. Koenig and Adam met 4 times between October of 2006 and February of 2007. It was during February that Adam's father and Dr. Koenig discussed how Adam's treatment was going. Peter told her that Adam was angry that he had to keep going to the meetings, especially because Dr. Koenig insisted that Peter not be in the room with them. She wrote to Peter stating, quote, "The process of asking Adam to talk with me directly about what is going on is critical. I appreciate that Adam's view is that he wouldn't say anything differently if you were in the room, but I think he's wrong. His judgment about how social or family dynamics work in a therapy situation is no more on target than his views regarding doorknobs and hand washing. He wants to control how the treatment goes, because his anxiety is nearly unbearable if he can't feel he knows what's going to happen. I understand that. At the same time, he can't control the treatment because his thinking is distorted and irrational. I can't agree to follow his lead. In fact, when I talk with him alone, he has to respond, and last time I pushed him a bit. I am not surprised that he was angry. That's okay. I told Adam he has a biological disorder that can be helped with medication. I told him what the medicines are and why they can work. I told him he's living in a box right now, and the box will only get smaller over time if he doesn't get some treatment. I'm fine to see him this week at 11. I am okay to talk with him and you at the beginning, but the session to address his issues has to be just him and me. I'd do it differently if I thought it would help, but I'm convinced it won't. Let me know your reactions." Unquote. According to the OCA's report, Peter felt that Adam started to improve around this time. He detailed an outing they went on together, where Adam was able to be in public without being too anxious. The improvement seemed to stop suddenly, though, after Adam very reluctantly agreed to take an antidepressant and anti-anxiety medication that Dr. Koenig recommended, called Celexa. Adam did end up taking the medication for a few days, but by the third morning, he reported some very strange symptoms. Nancy spoke to Dr. Koenig, and part of it read, quote, "On the third morning, he complained of dizziness. By that afternoon, he was disoriented. His speech was disjointed. He couldn't even figure out how to open his cereal box. He was sweating profusely. It was actually dripping off his hands. He said he couldn't think. He was practically vegetative." Unquote. Needless to say, Nancy and Adam decided that he should abruptly discontinue the medication. When Dr. Koenig was informed of this impromptu decision, she attempted to convince Nancy that she didn't believe that the medication could have been causing some of the symptoms, and the others could be managed with time and changes in the dosage. Despite this, Nancy said that the medication would be discontinued. Dr. Koenig continued to urge Nancy to have Adam persist with taking the Celexa, but she ultimately refused. Following this incident, Nancy wrote an email to Peter, stating that Adam loathed Dr. Koenig, and she believed a better plan of action would be to increase visits to their previous psychiatrist, Dr. Fox, who Adam was still seeing here and there. Peter seemed to agree with this, and so Adam stopped seeing any of the specialists at the Yale Child Study Center. If you remember, all of Dr. Fox's medical records regarding Adam were somehow destroyed, so it's very difficult to understand now what was being done for Adam's brittle mental health in his mid-teenage years. In later interviews, both Dr. King and Dr. Koenig said they believed that Adam was suffering from a severe case of anxiety and obsessive-compulsive disorder. They also believed that Adam, along with his parents, did not truly understand the gravity of his disabilities. They speculated that the constant change to make Adam more comfortable actually added to him feeling as though his impairments were not as serious as they truly were. Despite the push by the Yale Child Study Center to have Adam placed in a more therapeutic educational environment to help with his treatment, there was apparently no indication that he ever was. Though I did read that Peter, at the very least, did look into different options following the recommendation. Again, with medical records unavailable, it is really hard to get the full picture. It's important to note that no medical professional that Adam ever saw regarding his mental health reported noticing any behavior that was indicative that he would go on to commit a violent act. I apologize if this section was a little confusing. There was so much conflicting information to weed through when it came to this portion of his life, but I did try my best to lay the information out as best as I could. I want to know what you guys think about Nancy in particular, continuously refusing expert advice, and instead opting to change Adam's entire environment over and over in an attempt to cater to his needs. Adam was still in the 9th grade at this time and was having some success at attending school. He really seemed to be progressing, though it was slow. As the school year came to an end, the people helping Adam with his educational plan began to prepare him for 10th grade. Apparently their plan was to move him from the one-on-one tutoring that he was currently doing to a more conventional class setting. It is reported that Adam himself made it clear that he actually wanted to go back to attending school regularly. This decision was apparently cleared by a psychiatrist, who stated that he was confident that Adam would be prepared to become a full-time student once again. They worked on setting up a new IEP for him, but it seems as though they only focused on his curricular needs, and apparently neglected to take his social and emotional needs into account, like Dr. King feared would happen. This is thought to have eventually pushed Adam deeper into isolation, which we will talk about in a moment. Anyway, 10th grade finally came around, and Adam did indeed begin to attend classes as normal. He also joined the school's technology club, and it's said that his participation in this group was a very positive development. Apparently, Adam was able to socialize with the kids in his class fairly well, and he even became close with the club's faculty advisor, Richard Novia. Some of Adam's peers during this time were later interviewed and asked about him. None of them reported ever seeing Adam be bullied, but some apparently said they wouldn't be surprised if he was. One of his classmates described Adam as, quote, a quiet kid, somewhat anxious because of facial expressions and an upright posture when he walked. The only odd behavior was pulling his sleeves over his hands anytime he was handed an object from someone. Adam wiped it down with his sleeves before he would touch it, unquote. This student went on to say that Adam wouldn't initiate conversation with people but would participate if he was included. Another student, who lived near Adam, later said that he would sometimes talk with Adam, but agreed that he was very quiet. Someone who was also in the tech club later said that they tried hard to befriend Adam. They later stated that the tech club had, quote, lots of odd members, but Adam wasn't that extraordinarily different at that time. He would laugh at the stuff we did or said, would occasionally make jokes with us in tech club. Adam seemed to enjoy being with us, unquote. As time went on, those also in the club noticed that Adam began to open up a bit more and seemed to be more comfortable. He was still incredibly timid, but compared to how he was when he first joined, he seemed to be progressing. Around this time, Nancy was writing to the school with her appreciation for their hard work on getting Adam prepared to attend school like a normal teenager. However, she also started to send emails to the school, stating that Adam seemed to struggle with tolerating other students, and that he wanted to go back to doing more one-on-one studies. This seems contradictory to what Adam's peers report him acting like, but it's possible that this email was about the general school population, not the kids in the tech club particularly. Richard Novia, Adam's technology club advisor, later stated that Nancy would be at the school sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, because Adam would reportedly have emotional episodes. Richard stated that anytime a change occurred, Adam would immediately withdraw. He also observed that the crowds in the halls made Adam very nervous. Anyway, as the year progressed, Adam dropped some of his classes and kind of started to regress from the normal school setting. He made it to the end of the year, and during the summer, he held a gaming party at his house for his friends from the tech club to come to. Several of the club's members showed up, and later reported that nothing unusual happened. During this party, Adam, as well as his friends, just played video games in the basement. None of the attendees later stated that they saw any firearms present while they were in the house. Adam soon began 11th grade in the fall of 2008. It's documented that he did not resume attending typical classes. He apparently was not willing to spend time in a classroom with his peers. Some speculate that part of the reason for this was because Richard Novia, Adam's technology club advisor, whom he was close with, actually left the school. I just want to quickly mention that there was one payment made to Dr. Fox in October of 2008, but there are no records to indicate that Adam ever saw a mental health professional past this point. Continuing on, during this school year, Adam began to take classes at Western Connecticut State University in hopes of graduating from high school early. He was able to earn extra credits from these classes, and according to the OCA, Adam did meet the requirements to graduate school by the end of 11th grade, 1 year early, graduating in 2009. Adam continued to attend college after graduating high school, but reportedly wanted to increase the number of courses he was taking. A little later that year, Nancy and Peter spoke about Adam's ongoing college experience via email, and she said, quote, something must have gone wrong with class today. He wouldn't speak on the way home, and had his hood completely covering his face. He went straight to his room and won't eat. I gave him time alone to compose and have tried to speak to him twice now, but he just keeps saying it does not matter, and leave me, I don't want to speak of it. Did you look at the syllabus? Is it possible he has already missed a deadline or not been prepared for a quiz or test? I don't know what I should do. I don't want to try to talk to him again because he sounds like he is on the verge of crying, unquote. Not long after this, Adam dropped out of college altogether. At some point in 2009, Adam actually got a job doing work on computers. His employer at this time described him as, quote, cordial and professional, unquote. They also said that Adam exhibited expert attributes. I was unable to figure out just how long he held this position for, but I did want to mention it, as it shows that Adam was still making strides to get out of his comfort zone. In September of the same year, when Adam was 17 years old, his parents, Peter and Nancy, finally got a divorce after 7 years of being separated. Their official split was civil and seemed to have no bitterness behind it. According to reports, Nancy received over $200,000 a year in alimony after the divorce, or over $16,000 a month. This enabled her to not have to work, instead staying home to take care of Adam and the housework. In early 2010, Nancy sent an email to Peter, telling him that Adam had been on the bathroom floor, crying hysterically. This was Peter's response, quote, "Adam needs to communicate the source of his sorrow. We have less than 3 months to help him before he is 18. I am convinced that when he turns 18, he will either try to enlist or just leave the house to become homeless." Nancy replied with, quote, "I just spent 2 hours sitting outside his door, talking to him about why he is so upset. He failed every single test during that class, yet he thought he knew the material," unquote. I want to be clear that I wasn't able to figure out exactly what class she is talking about here, because the timeline is a little fuzzy in this area. I believe they were talking about one of his classes from before he dropped out of college. However, at this point, it would have been at least a few months since he took classes at the college, so I'm unsure why it would still be affecting him this badly. Anyway, later in the same day as her first response, Nancy wrote to Peter again saying, quote, "I have the feeling when he said he would rather be homeless than to take any more tests. He really meant it," unquote. Following his decision to drop out of college, Adam's antisocial tendencies got even worse. He completely withdrew from practically every community-based aspect of his life. It's unclear whether Adam had any motivation to achieve anything past this point. There was little to no indication that he had any sort of goal laid out for his future. Just as Peter said, after his 18th birthday, in April of 2010, Adam announced that he wanted to join the Army Rangers. Peter reportedly discouraged this decision, most likely because he understood his son's capabilities. According to reports, Adam didn't end up signing up when the time came to do so. Later in this year, Adam and Peter visited a college campus together, looking at different options since Adam's plan to enlist didn't go through. They first went to Norwich University, but ended up deciding that Adam would do better taking classes at a community college for the time being. Adam planned on taking 5 classes, but Peter tried to convince him that he wouldn't be able to handle that big of a workload and suggested taking only 2 classes for now. This underestimation of his abilities did not make Adam happy. I'm not sure how long after, but at some point, Peter went to pick Adam up to spend the weekend with him, and Adam absolutely refused to go. Peter later recalled that it was one of the only times he saw Adam truly pissed off. Adam completely stopped spending time with his father. Part of the reason for this is thought to be due to the discouragement that Peter showed towards Adam for planning to take so many classes. Peter did his best to reach out to his son via email, to invite him to events and outings, which Adam would repeatedly decline to participate in. Eventually, he completely stopped replying to his dad altogether. It's reported that the day Adam refused to go with him for the weekend was the last time that Peter ever saw his son. This didn't stop Peter though, as throughout the next few years, until the fall of 2012, he attempted to get a hold of Adam at least once every few months, but was never successful. Peter later stated that he felt as though Nancy was a contributing factor as to why Adam cut contact with him. Also, according to Peter, when the two of them spoke, Nancy often told him that Adam was doing just fine. He was completely unaware of the truth, that Adam was regressing heavily, and that his mental health was deteriorating rapidly. In fact, Nancy had neglected to mention this to anyone, even her closest family members. Sometime in 2010, Adam did indeed pick up some classes at Norwalk Community College. It wasn't long after this that he dropped out though, after only 1 semester of taking classes. According to some sources, in December of the same year, Adam also lost contact with his older brother Ryan, who was now living in New Jersey and working in New York. It's clear to see that Adam was isolating himself from those who were closest to him. It is reported that during Adam's later teenage years and so forth, the only friends he had were ones that he met through online chat rooms. However, there is an exception to this, which I will talk about in a few minutes. Despite his disinterest in being close with anyone in real life, Adam seemed to really connect with those he met online, and apparently was a part of a small community of users who shared his increasing interest in mass killers, which had been growing for some time at this point. Instead of the positive influence that some people in Adam's life posed, these online friends did not aid in creating a productive and positive environment for Adam's brittle mental health. Paired with this, with Adam being in his late teens, he had absolutely no supervision over what he was getting up to online. I'm sure there is a lot we don't know about his online activities, but I can't help but wonder if Nancy would have known what he was doing on his computer, if she would have had a better idea of the person Adam was morphing into. With Adam locking himself away in his room for most of the day, all he could do was communicate with people he met online. On November 17, 2010, Adam wrote an online friend an email, and it's clear from the text that he seemed to be close with this person. The email reads, quote, "It's amazing how fast time passes. It's hard to believe that it's already been this long. I'm sorry about my mood over the summer. I was more depressed than I had ever been before. When I apologized for it, you said that I wasn't behaving disrespectfully and that I never had been. But I don't think I've ever been as kind toward you as you deserve. I don't know how much it ever seemed like it, but I've always really appreciated your friendship. I've pretty much been a complete loner throughout my life, but I'm sure that even if I had more friends, you'd still be my favorite person I've met. I'd like it if we could do something together again sometime. Please email back and we could figure out something amazing." Unquote. I'm now going to go into some of the information I learned regarding his internet activity, though it is probably not a complete and full picture, as I'm sure a lot of it either isn't completely known or isn't available to the public. During many of his years spent online, Adam researched and meticulously documented mass killers. From 2009 and onwards, he had seemingly been obsessive over it. He made numerous accounts on different websites dedicated to discussions on killers and firearms in particular. He also wrote and made many edits to Wikipedia pages covering various shootings. Some of them included pages on Kip Kinkle, the Luby's Massacre, and the West Roads Mall shooting. He was seemingly obsessed with several shootings and attacks, doing in-depth research on them. During this time, Adam was compiling a massive spreadsheet of details on killers and their attacks. The spreadsheet listed the killer's name, their age, their gender, the number of injured and dead, the weapons used, the location the attack took place in, the date of the attack, and whether the killer was deceased, among a few other details. To think that I'm doing this exact thing right now is a little strange. Anyway, about 2 years before he went on to commit his attack, Adam met a friend on a website dedicated to the 1999 Columbine shooting, and she later described him as, quote, "the weirdest person online," unquote. She also stated that Adam was, quote, "singularly focused and obsessed with mass murders and killing sprees," unquote. According to her, Adam spent most of his time online researching and discussing various mass murder cases with others. She also would say that Adam reportedly looked up to school shooters and even respected them. Throughout their friendship, this woman noticed that he seemingly harbored a very severe case of depression, and she also said that he always appeared to have a negative view of the world. This friend definitely noticed Adam's infatuation with killers, as she also reported that he used several usernames referring to real-life shooters. Though I am unsure just how much she knew about Adam's mental issues, personal life, or identity, I do wish that she was able to see the threat that Adam was becoming and alert someone about it. She was obviously also a part of this group of people who spent time on websites dedicated to shootings, though, so I guess it's possible she didn't really see him as being much different to her, at least regarding his interests. In August of 2011, Adam made a post online expressing his respect for the actions and writings of Anders Breivik, who killed 77 people in a combined bombing and shooting less than a month prior. Adam said in this post, quote, "I'm normally not interested in non-Kaczynski bombers, but the format and organization of everything involved was such an impressive instance of mass murder self-actualization that it seemed fictional. I wouldn't call it encouraging, but it seemed motivational enough in some sense that it was the kind of thing you would find in a particularly macabre self-improvement book," unquote. I also wanted to mention that Adam recorded and uploaded many videos to YouTube, where he spoke about various topics and his thoughts on them. Some of these subjects included antinatalism, mental health, and religion. His account flew under the radar for some time and was only discovered to be his account in 2021, when users of a mass killer subreddit found the channel. The videos were taken down in September of that year. I'm going to play just a few clips from his videos for you, just so you can get a sense of his content.
What do I feel right now? Do I feel none of that matters and I can just enjoy my happiness? Basically, no, fuck life. I should kill myself. This is me in my happiest mood. Because there is no happiness. I mean, happiness is death. I've already outlined in my previous videos, my previous rambling vlog, whatever videos today, that life is suffering and death is happiness. It makes perfect sense to me right now. It always makes perfect sense to me. And so even when there's not really a difference in my actions based on whether I'm in my worst or best mood, I still persist in just going through the motions, and I never pursue death, and I never pursue life. I'm just kind of in an intermediate stage. But I am in a good mood, so don't let anyone tell you that I want to die because life is so miserable, because that's not my position. I've said this so many times. Life is a great thing, and that's the problem. Life is what originally caused me to have value, and changing my life will never do anything but create different delusions than the ones I already have. Unfortunately, as of right now, I lack the discipline to pursue my death and to rid myself of the values which delude me, even though I recognize that the solution to life is death. But I do commend others who do commit suicide. They have freed themselves from culture, life, and all value. They have freed themselves from themselves. No, maybe I will. No, I won't. I say, maybe I will kill myself tonight, but no, I'm not going to do it. I already know I'm not going to do it. Maybe I'll just ramble for a few hours. I can't release something like this. If I were to release something like this, involuntarily committed, imprisoned for the rest of my life. Life is a prison, but just saying that, that's even risking being involuntarily committed.
On December 20th, 2011, almost exactly 1 year prior to the shooting Adam would go on to commit, he called into a radio show called Anarchy Radio. During his call, Adam went by the name of Greg, and he spoke with the host about the famous case of Travis the Chimp. If you haven't heard of this case before, I highly recommend reading up on it, because it is quite interesting to learn about. Just to give you a quick description of the case, Travis was a chimpanzee that was raised in a house with his human owners. He would go with them on drives, to work, to the store, and became well known around the town. After 13 years of being raised this way, Travis attacked and severely disfigured his owner's friend's face and body before being shot and killed by a responding officer. Here's the audio from Adam's call into the radio show.
Hello. We got the collapsible headphones here, but we're back.
Sorry, we got Greg on the phone.
Oh, Greg. Okay. How's it going?
Hi, good. I'm a fan of your writing.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank you
sorry to
very
bring
much.
up such an old news story, but I couldn't find anything that you said about the topic, and it seems relevant to your interests, so I thought I would bring up Travis the Chimp. Do you remember him?
I don't.
Well, he was a highly domesticated chimpanzee who lived in a suburban home in Stamford, Connecticut.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
And he was raised just like a human child starting from the week he was born. By the time that he was 14 years old, which would be somewhere around age 20 in human years,
Uh-huh.
he slept in a bed, he took his own baths, he dressed himself, he brushed his teeth with an electric toothbrush.
Really? When was this?
Well, this happened in early 2009.
Oh.
Oh.
Uh-huh.
He ate his meals at a table and enjoyed human foods like ice cream. And he used a remote control to watch television and liked baseball games. And he even used a computer to look at pictures on the internet.
Huh.
And it goes without saying that Travis was very overweight. He was 200 pounds when he should have been around the low hundreds.
Mm-hmm.
And he was actually taking Xanax.
Amazing.
I couldn't find any information about why he was taking it, but it just seems to say a lot that he was given it at all. And basically, I think Travis wasn't really any different than a mentally handicapped human child. But anyway, one day in February 2009, he was acting very agitated, and at some point grabbed his owner's car keys, went outside, and started leaping from car to car, apparently wanting to go for a car ride. And he was acting very aggressively, so his owner called her friend over to get her to help him to calm down and go back inside. And once she arrived, he immediately attacked her, and his owner tried to stop him, but couldn't, and she even resorted to stabbing him with a knife, but nothing worked. And she said that after she stabbed him, he looked at her as if to say, "Why'd you do that to me, Mom?" Because apparently that was what their relationship was like, no different than between a human mother and a human child. So after the stabbing, she called the police, who arrived 12 minutes after the attack, at which point her friend was pretty close to dead. And once the cruiser came up, Travis went over to it, tried to open the locked passenger door. He smashed off the side view mirror, went over to the driver's door, opened it, and the cops shot him. He fled back into the house, where he went to his playroom and bled to death. And this might not seem very relevant, but I'm bringing it up because afterward, everyone was condemning his owner for saying how irresponsible she was for raising a chimp like it was a child, and that she should have known something like this would happen because chimps aren't supposed to be living in civilization. They're supposed to be living in the wild among each other. But their criticism stops there, and the implication is that there's no way anything could have gone wrong in his life if he had been living in civilization as a human rather than a chimp.
Indeed.
I'm so interested in Travis because he brings up questions about this whole process of child raising. Civilization isn't something which just happens to gently exist without us having to do anything, because every newborn child, human child, is born in a chimp-like state, and civilization is only sustained by conditioning them for years on end so that they'll accept it for what it is. And since we've gone through this conditioning, we can observe a human family raising a human child, and I'm sure that even you have trouble intuitively seeing it as something unnatural. But when we see a chimp in that position, we viscerally know that there's something profoundly wrong with the situation. And it's easy to say there's something wrong with it simply because it's a chimp, but what's the real difference between us and our closest relatives? Travis wasn't an untamed monster at all. He wasn't just feigning domestication, he was civilized. He was able to integrate into society. He was a chimp actor when he was younger, and his owner drove him around the city frequently in association with her towing business, where he met many different people and got along with everyone. If Travis had been some nasty monster all his life, it would have been widely reported, but to the contrary, it seems like everyone who knew him said how shocked they were that Travis had been so savage, because they knew him as a sweet child. And there were 2 isolated incidents early in his life when he acted aggressively, but summarizing them would take too long, so basically I'll just say that he didn't act really any differently than a human child would, and the people who would use that as an indictment against having chimps live as humans do wouldn't apply the same thing to humans, so it's just kind of irrelevant. But anyway, look what civilization did to him. It had the same exact effect on him as it has on humans. He was profoundly sick in every sense of the term, and he had to resort to these surrogate activities like watching baseball and looking at pictures on a computer screen and taking Xanax. He was a complete mess. And his attack wasn't simply because he was a senselessly violent, impulsive chimp, which was how his behavior was universally portrayed. Immediately before his attack, he had desperately been wanting his owner to drive him somewhere. And the best reason I can think of for why he would want that, looking at his entire life, would be that some little thing he experienced was the last straw, and he was overwhelmed by the life that he had, and he wanted to get out of it by changing his environment, and the best way that he knew how to deal with that was by getting his owner to drive him somewhere else. And when his owner's friend arrived, he knew that she was trying to coax him back into his life of domestication, and he couldn't handle that, so he attacked her and anyone else who approached him. And dismissing his attack as simply being the senseless, violent impulsiveness of a chimp instead of a human is wishful thinking at best. His attack can be seen entirely parallel to the attacks and random acts of violence that you bring up on your show every week, committed by humans, which the mainstream also has no explanation for. And if he's an actual human, I just don't think it would be such a stretch to say that he very well could have been a teenage mall shooter or something like that.
Yeah.
And
wow. Thank you, Greg.
Yeah.
That's quite a story. Yeah, that's really apropos, isn't it? Travis the Chimp.
It's just that I'm a little surprised that I never heard you bring it up at all, because maybe I'm just seeing connections where there aren't any, but...
Not, I think not. No, I didn't catch that one. I didn't, maybe I was out of the country or something. I don't know, but I missed it. Thanks very much, man.
Thank you.
Take care. Wow. Very well articulated, I think.
Many speculate that Adam was somehow relating the story of Travis to his own life, but I want to know what you guys think about this potential connection. A few months after this call, Adam's birthday rolled around in April of 2012, making him now 20 years old. Outside of spending time online, one of Adam's favorite activities was going to the local movie theater to use their Dance Dance Revolution game machine. He had played this game all throughout his life, but it seemed as though he spent even more time playing it as he got older. He went to the local movie theater to play so often that regulars there began to refer to Adam as, quote, the DDR guy, unquote. According to some reports, Adam would play this game for hours at a time, and I even read that he once played for 10 hours straight. There were days that the only thing he did was play Dance Dance Revolution. There are a few videos capturing him playing the game, and they are honestly so unsettling to watch now. I just find his movements to be really creepy and eerie for some reason. Anyway, some speculate that Adam's deteriorating mental health was too much for him to handle, and DDR was one of the only ways to distract himself. One day, someone at the theater asked Adam if he was okay, after they witnessed him restlessly playing the game for an extended period of time. Adam reportedly said that he was out of money to play, but just did not want to go home. The person offered him some money so that he could continue, which he accepted. This person later said that the movie theater's manager had to actually unplug the machine so that Adam would stop playing, since he would sometimes fall into a trance-like state and would not respond to any communication. According to the report published by the OCA, Adam did actually have one friend around this time that he would meet up with to play DDR or go to the movies. He apparently met this friend while playing the game at the theater. As far as I could tell, this was one of his only, if not the only in-person friend Adam had at the time. This friend later stated that though the two of them often spoke about mental health issues, Adam never discussed his specific diagnoses. Other topics they talked about included computers, hiking, family, human nature, mortality, mass murders, and serial killers. The friend also later told authorities that Adam was capable of smiling, laughing, and making jokes. In June of 2012, Adam and this friend reportedly had a falling out, and they stopped getting together to hang out. When he wasn't at the theater playing DDR or at home on his computer, Adam would reportedly take long hikes and walks around his neighborhood, and would sometimes choose to stroll around his former school, Sandy Hook Elementary. Moving along, on July 23, 2012, Adam wrote an email to an online friend, quote, "My interest in mass murders has been perfunctory for such a long time. The enthusiasm I had back when Virginia Tech happened feels like it's been gone for 100 billion years. I don't care about anything. I'm just done with it all," unquote. People who knew Nancy later said that in 2012, she began to spend a lot of time out of the house. She would reportedly go to the bar frequently and usually stayed out late. It's also reported that Nancy began to take vacations a lot, leaving Adam alone at home for days at a time, isolating him even further from any human connection. Later interviews with those who were friends and acquaintances with Nancy mentioned that particularly in 2012, she seemed to have a heightened sense of concern for Adam. Apparently, she told some of them that Adam had not come out of his room for months, and that he would not engage with her at all. She expressed worry that he did not care about her anymore. In late October of 2012, Connecticut was hit with a massive Category 3 Atlantic hurricane named Hurricane Sandy. It's reported as one of the most destructive storms to ever impact Connecticut. Though they weren't hit as badly as other parts of Connecticut, Adam and Nancy's power did go out for several days. Nancy suggested they go to a hotel for the time being, and Adam absolutely refused. She later told her acquaintances that he basically shut down during this period of time. The next month, in November of 2012, after about 2 years of attempting to get into contact with Adam to no avail, Peter emailed Nancy with his frustration. She responded with, quote, "I will talk to him about that, but I didn't want to harass him. He has had a bad summer and actually stopped going out. He wouldn't even go to the grocery store, so it's been pretty stressful. Yesterday was the first time in months I've been able to talk him into going to do his own shopping, and his car battery was actually dead because it sat so long. I ended up spending most of the day getting it fixed, and now I'm going to have to start pressuring him to go out all over again." Unquote. It's clear to me that Nancy put Adam's preferences over everything else in their lives. She really went above and beyond in the home in order to cater to her son's extremely particular and peculiar needs. Apparently, he prohibited a Christmas tree from being put up in the house, and since he did not want their family cat anymore, they ended up getting rid of it. Nancy would instruct people not to ring the doorbell, and also to give her plenty of warning before making any loud noises, such as using power tools, as these noises would bother Adam greatly. When people would call the house, Nancy would often make up that Adam was busy or not at home, since he usually preferred not to interact with others. Nancy took care of all of the daily chores in the house. She cooked some of his meals, cleaned the entire home, and even did Adam's laundry for him. The only thing she did not do was clean his room, because she was strictly prohibited from even entering it. According to WashingtonPost.com, Adam was extremely particular with his eating habits. First of all, he was very picky about the type of food he consumed to begin with. But even after that, Adam would need to have his food arranged in a certain way on specific types of dishes in order to be able to eat. In spite of all of her extra effort to accommodate his needs, there were times where Adam would only communicate with his mom via email or written letters, despite living in the same house together, and often only being a room or two away from each other. This tendency reportedly increased in the months leading up to the shooting, as he started to isolate himself further and stay in his room for longer stretches at a time. In all, I think it's clear that Nancy was trying to be supportive of Adam, who was obviously not easy to care for in the slightest. But she unmistakably did many things wrong, such as discontinuing his crucial treatment and giving him unlimited access to firearms despite his strange behavior. Getting back to the timeline, it's reported that sometime in the months prior to the shooting, Nancy was thinking about moving herself and Adam to Washington State. As I'm sure you know already, this never ended up happening. In late November of 2012, Nancy traveled to visit her family for Thanksgiving and left Adam at home. About 2 weeks prior to the shooting, Nancy sent an email to a friend, expressing her concern about something she had found in the home. Apparently, Nancy stumbled upon multiple violent drawings that Adam had made. Nancy described one of these drawings to her friend, stating that it was, quote, a woman clutching a religious item, like rosary beads, and holding a child, and she was getting all shot up in the back with blood flying everywhere, unquote. Despite her worries about them, Nancy decided not to confront Adam about these concerning drawings. On December 5th, Nancy was again emailing a friend, but this time she was talking about an upcoming trip she had planned to London. In the email, Nancy wrote, quote, sadly that trip had to be rescheduled due to a couple of last-minute problems on the home front, unquote. I wasn't able to find any information that stated what these problems were exactly. Nancy had a 2-night trip to New Hampshire planned on December 11th. According to an official report, she told friends the purpose of this trip was to get a break from the difficulties that came with caring for Adam, but also that she was using this trip to see how leaving Adam alone for longer periods of time would go. The day before Nancy was set to leave, she texted a friend about something that happened. She said, quote, I was off to a rough start. Poor Adam bumped his head really badly, and we were dealing with blood at 6:30 in the morning. He is okay. It looked worse than it actually is, unquote. Nancy left to go on the trip anyway, and arrived at her destination on December 11th, leaving Adam home alone once again. Some speculate that Adam spent the 2 days his mother was gone, planning what would later become one of the worst attacks in US history. On the morning of December 13th, 2012, the GPS system in Adam's car recorded a drive that he took. On this ride, he drove past the entrance to Sandy Hook Elementary School, drove another half of a mile, turned around, and then took the same route home. This was about 24 hours before his attack took place. Later that night, Nancy returned back to the house from her trip, and unbeknownst to her, her son was harboring an unimaginable plan that would claim the lives of many innocent adults and children. It would be the last night that Nancy Lanza would ever spend alive. I'm about to get into the actual shooting, but before I do that, I just want to explain Nancy's firearm purchases, so you have a better idea of how much firepower Adam had access to. She purchased her Bushmaster XM15E2S rifle on March 29, 2010, her Ishmash Saiga 12-gauge shotgun on April 10, 2010, her Sig Sauer P226 pistol on March 16, 2011, and her Glock 20 SF pistol on January 5, 2012. Nancy did own other firearms, though I'm not sure how many or when they were purchased. Now, with the entire bizarre and concerning history out of the way, let's get into the tragic event that makes this case so infamous. As always, I will now be referring to today's shooter, Adam, by his last name, Lanza. As stated in the beginning, there was a lot of conflicting or incomplete information in this case. I have put together the order of events that seem to be the most likely based on countless sources, including official FBI and police reports. On the morning of December 14, 2012, the now 20-year-old Lanza took the first steps of a violent plan that he had conjured up. Lanza equipped himself with his mother's .22 caliber Savage Mark II rifle and entered her bedroom on the second floor of their home. Sometime before 9:30 a.m., Lanza stood over his mother and took aim, firing several point-blank shots, hitting her 4 times in the head as she lay asleep in her bed, killing her instantly. Shortly after ending his mother's life, Lanza discarded the Savage Mark II rifle on the floor near her bed and made his way to the room of the house that stored his computer and the rest of his mom's firearms. He then armed himself with 3 guns, his mother's Bushmaster XM15E2S rifle, her Glock 20 SF pistol, and her Sig Sauer P226 pistol. After obtaining these weapons, Lanza proceeded towards his computer, removing a hard drive from it and damaging it with some object, likely a dumbbell, screwdriver, or set of keys, destroying most of the contents that were stored on the drive in anticipation of the later investigation. Lanza then geared up for the next part of his attack, donning black cargo pants, black leather shoes, a black comfort shirt, a polo shirt over that, and a green utility cargo vest over both shirts. He then put on a hoodie to cover his bulky equipment, likely to not draw any unwanted attention to himself on the way to his next target. He also wore a 5.11 tactical duty belt and black suspenders to help support the heavy load of ammunition in his cargo pants. It is reported that Lanza brought over 400 rounds of ammunition and several high-capacity magazines with him to his next destination. Finally, Lanza attached a pistol holster to his right leg. This is where he kept the Glock 20 SF. He stored the Sig Sauer in his left pant pocket. Now that Lanza was armed and ready, he went outside to the garage and loaded a 4th weapon into either his own or his mom's car, the Ishmash Saiga 12-gauge shotgun, before getting inside of the car himself. He put on a black boonie hat and a pair of fingerless gloves before starting the vehicle and driving away from his house. His destination was Sandy Hook Elementary School, which was only about 5 miles away. I can't imagine what kind of thoughts were running through Lanza's head during this drive. It was probably the longest 10-minute drive of his entire life, knowing what he was about to do, and that he might not make it out alive. It's very possible that Lanza had already planned on the impending shooting ending with his own death. If this was the case, him knowing he was about to be dead within an hour or so was probably the only thing on his mind during the drive. Cutting over to Sandy Hook Elementary School for just a moment, the school day was just beginning. According to an official report, over 570 people were in the building on this day. The entire school was in the holiday spirit, with Christmas being only 11 days away. At least a few of the classes had Christmas-themed activities planned, and students along with teachers were excited for the upcoming holiday. At approximately 9:30 a.m., as the classes were just getting started, Lanza arrived at the school. He drove up the street leading to the property and pulled into the parking lot, ultimately pulling up in the front of the building. Lanza stopped the car about 20 meters from the front doors of the school, grabbed the Bushmaster rifle from the passenger seat, and exited the vehicle. This is when I believe that Lanza discarded the hoodie he had over his vest, which is evident by crime scene photos showing two hoodies near the passenger side of the vehicle. It's important to note that I was unable to determine exactly where this second hoodie came from. It could have already been in the car, or he could have just been wearing two hoodies. After discarding the hoodies, Lanza made the short walk to the front entrance of the building, where he first tried to open the doors by simply pulling the handle, but he soon realized that the doors wouldn't budge. Possibly unbeknownst to him, a new security system had been installed at the school and required every visitor to ring a bell at the front door and wait for permission to enter. Though this measure was in place, it did absolutely nothing to stop Lanza's impending rampage. He quickly backed up away from the doors, taking aim at a glass pane directly to the right of the entrance. He then fired 8 rifle rounds into the window, shattering a hole into it. Lanza finally made entry to the building through the now gaping hole. The time was now just past 9:30 a.m. During this time, the usual morning announcements were in the process of being broadcasted throughout the school on the intercom system. Nearby, the principal, Dawn Hawksprung, and the school psychologist, Mary Sherlock, heard the initial loud shots ring out, along with glass shattering while meeting with other faculty in a conference room located just down the hall from the front entrance. Most of the group did not immediately realize what the shots were, though. According to the lead investigator, Daniel Jewis, Dawn told the other people in the room to stay put while she went to check out what the commotion was. Against her statement, along with Dawn, Mary, and another staff member, Natalie Hammond, got up and went out into the hallway, curious as to what was going on. According to Natalie, she originally thought that the sound was a stack of chairs falling over. Dawn and Mary made their way to the front entrance to investigate what was causing the disruptive noise. Natalie exited the room after them, but was reportedly at least 10 feet behind the two, who were now nearing the source of the noise. By the time Natalie fully made it out of the room, Dawn and Mary were already down the hallway, about to turn the corner into the school's front lobby, where Lanza had just climbed through the shattered window. Another person that was in the conference room later gave a statement of their experience at this point in time. They said, quote, "I am the blank at Sandy Hook School. On December 14th, 2012, at 9:30 a.m., I was attending a planning and placement meeting in Conference Room 9. By 9:35 a.m., we had already started. Blank had started speaking, and then shortly after, I heard the noise coming from the lobby. I initially felt that the noise was gunfire. The noise was loud with the sound of glass crashing. All of us in the room stood up. This initial round of gunfire continued rapidly with crashing. Dawn, Mary, and Natalie, in this order, left the room, all together in single file," unquote. As Lanza walked further into the lobby, he spotted Dawn and Mary coming toward him. He quickly raised his rifle and opened fire on the two, killing them both almost instantly. Natalie, on the other hand, was pretty far behind them, so she was not immediately targeted. Natalie was, however, still struck with a bullet in the calf immediately after exiting the conference room, though it seems it could have been a stray bullet from Lanza's shots at the other two. I believe that at this distance, Lanza would have been able to hit her in a more critical area if he was targeting her specifically. Natalie later stated that she felt a shock and then a warmth on her leg, and she knew that she had been shot at that moment. Her instincts kicked in, and after catching a glimpse of the shooter, along with her two co-workers that she knew were already deceased, she fell to the ground and pretended to be dead. It was then that she felt her body jolt again, as another bullet entered her body. Sources vary on how many times she was shot in total, but from my research it's clear that she was hit with at least 2 bullets, possibly more. At this point, a teacher that was at the far end of the hallway from the lobby was also struck in the foot by one of Lanza's bullets. She retreated into a classroom and hid among the others inside before calling 911.
State Police Emergency.
I'm at Sandy Hook School. There's somebody shooting guns.
Okay, we have someone over there. Do you know if there's any injuries?
I'm bleeding. My foot's bleeding.
You're bleeding?
Yeah.
Okay. We're
I'm in
gonna
the kindergarten room facing the...
Hey, I got one victim here with their foot got shot. Send an ambulance. And we got the police coming. Are you guys all in a room now, or is
We're in
you're in the classroom?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Can you guys stay on the ground there?
Yeah, we can, but my door's not locked.
Okay.
Our room faces the playground.
Is there any way you can lock it?
No, he's out in the hallway.
He's out in the hallway?
Yeah.
Natalie kept still on the ground, despite her multiple actively bleeding wounds and the excruciating pain she felt. Eventually, Lanza disappeared from view, although Natalie did not see exactly where he went. Once she heard no movement and had no shooter in sight, she slowly got herself up and opened the door to the conference room that she and the other 2 staff members had just come from. Police reports state that Lanza fired 17 rounds from his position at the opening of the hallway from the lobby. The person in the conference room continued their statement, saying, quote, "Shortly after, a second round of gunfire ensued, which is when I believe Dawn and Mary were killed. When Dawn, Mary, and Natalie had left the room, the conference room door was shut, but I can't remember how it was closed. The rest of us in the conference room hid. I hid under a table to the left of the door as you walk in. When Natalie returned to the room, I remember the shooting kept continuing. Natalie had told us that she had been shot. Natalie was holding the door shut with her right arm. I reached out to Natalie, holding her foot," unquote. I just want to quickly mention that many people online claim that Lanza entered the office area before making his way down the hall towards the conference room and classrooms. It's unclear if this happened, as some sources claim this, while others have no mention of it. I did find an interview with the school nurse who claimed Lanza entered the office briefly, but I find that her story has some conflicting information. She first claimed that Lanza looked her in the eye, then she completely changed her story in another interview, stating she only saw the shooter's legs when he entered the office. I know trauma can affect the way you remember things, but I'm going to go off of official reports, which don't mention him entering this area at all. I just wanted you to keep this possibility in mind. The first call placed to 911 is reported to either have taken place less than 1 minute after the shooting began, at around 9:35 a.m., or about a minute and a half after the first shots rang out. I'm not sure exactly who placed the first call. Either way, it didn't take long for multiple calls to start flooding into the local dispatch center. For as scary of a situation this would be, most of the calls are very calm in nature, while also stressing the urgency of the situation.
Newtown 911, what's the location of the emergency?
Sandy Hook School. I think there's somebody shooting in here. Sandy Hook School.
Okay, what makes you think that?
Because somebody's got a gun. I saw a glimpse of somebody. They're running down the hallway.
Okay.
They're still running. They're still shooting. Sandy Hook School, please.
Like I mentioned before, the school was in the middle of morning announcements when the shooting first began. There are reports that state someone purposely switched the intercom on after the first shots went off, to give a warning to everyone around the whole building, but I found it stated more often that it had already been on for the announcements. Because of Lanza's close proximity to the school's office, the 17 rounds fired in the entrance to the hallway were captured and broadcasted all over the school. This, in turn, gave people in the classrooms further away from the entrance, who may not have heard the shots otherwise, an early warning of the horror that had just unfolded in the lobby. From reports, we know that Lanza did not travel very far into the school, but if he had, this signal of danger broadcasted to all of the classrooms definitely gave teachers a head start in securing their rooms, possibly saving many lives in the process. As the teachers and students all over the school became aware of the imminent danger, they did their best to protect themselves by hiding. One staff member, a first-grade teacher named Caitlin Roig, immediately knew what the gunfire was. Her room was the very first one on the left side of the hallway, sharing a wall with the lobby. This meant that the initial gunfire was just feet away from the classroom's door. She knew she had to act incredibly quickly if she wanted any chance of saving herself and her students. Caitlin later said, quote, It started with a single loud bang, and the second I heard it, I knew it was gunfire. It was close, and I had to get myself and my 15 children somewhere we wouldn't be found." Unquote. The class was engaged in a morning meeting on the classroom floor when the shooting began. Caitlin instinctively jumped up, closed the door, and shut the classroom lights off. There was no time to grab the keys from her desk to lock the door, so she instead spent the few moments she had planning her next move. There was no other exit in the room, so there was no chance to escape the building entirely. The only option she had was somehow fitting herself, as well as 15 students, in a tiny 3-by-4-foot bathroom located within the room. According to the police report, Caitlin instructed the students to pile into the bathroom, which they thankfully did with little retaliation. Caitlin later said, quote, "I told the children that we were going into the bathroom right now. Of course, they didn't know what was happening, so I started picking them up, putting them in the room as best I could." Unquote. According to the police report, Caitlin started by putting the smallest student on top of the toilet paper dispenser as she moved the other kids into the cramped room. While holding the student on the dispenser up with her arm, Caitlin instructed 5 or 6 students to stand on top of the toilet. She packed the remaining children into the very limited empty space and then told them to crouch down. Caitlin was able to wheel a bookshelf in front of the bathroom door before closing it, which helped to secure the room a little more, though it wasn't very hard to move and wouldn't offer a massive amount of protection. She then shut the bathroom door and locked it, but kept the light on. According to the police report, she was able to get everyone in place in under 1 minute. Outside of the room, the sound of gunfire started up again, echoing throughout the school's empty hallways. The exact route taken by the shooter is reported differently depending on the source, so I'm just going to go with what makes the most sense to me, and what the lead investigator on the case, Daniel Jewis, believes happened. Even the official final report lists the sequence of events as unable to be determined, so just remember that. After killing the 2 staff members in the hallway and injuring the other 2, Lanza passed by room 12, where Caitlin Roig and her students were sheltered in the bathroom. It's not completely clear why he simply walked past the room. However, I did read that Caitlin had never taken the black construction paper off of the door's window, following a lockdown drill they underwent only weeks prior. Because of this, and the fact that the lights were off, it's possible that he assumed the room was empty. He continued down the hallway and made his way into room 10, a first-grade classroom, taught by Victoria Soto and para-educator Anne-Marie Murphy. That day, the class was excitedly preparing to make gingerbread houses together. But instead of the fun-filled day they were planning to have, the class was met with unimaginable violence. Again, this section of the shooting is a little unclear, with there being multiple different accounts of what exactly happened. I will make sure to list what I was able to dig up, and you can make your own assumption. The events went one of 2 ways. The first version goes as follows. The teacher, Victoria, had heard the shots and quickly made the steps to protect her kids, and might have already partially hidden them when Lanza entered the room, rifle in hand. Obviously, she would have had little time to get all of her students hidden since her room was the first to be entered. Victoria was unfortunately not able to finish hiding everyone, or herself, before the shooter appeared. I did read reports stating that Victoria tried to save her students by telling Lanza that they were in another part of the school, but that would only make sense if all students were hidden out of sight, which I don't believe to be the case based on multiple reports and statements later made by survivors. The second version of possible events is that instead of her students being hidden, she had grouped them together in the back of the room and was heading towards the door to lock it just as Lanza entered. Either way, he made his way into the room, raised his rifle, and shot Victoria Soto as well as the other teacher in the classroom, Anne-Marie Murphy. Victoria used the last bit of her strength and effort to attempt to further shield her students from the impending gunfire. Anne-Marie Murphy was holding one of the children in her arms when she was shot, and he unfortunately died as well. Both teachers along with multiple students were sadly killed. At one point, Lanza stopped shooting to reload, or because the rifle jammed, and that was when one student in the room, Jesse Lewis, yelled for everyone to run. Along with this warning, the shots that rang off in the room frightened several of the students, possibly out of their hiding spots, and they attempted to flee. Some students listened, but unfortunately, there just wasn't enough time for everyone to get out. Despite his bravery in warning his classmates, Jesse himself would not live through the attack. One student that was in this classroom later spoke about the moment that Lanza entered the room. Quote, "I remember being at the front of the classroom, and he came in and stood right next to me, and I watched all my friends drop. One of the victims who did not make it, he told me and a couple other people to run, and we did. We ran out of the classroom, out of the school, and on the way, we saw bodies in the hallways and doors blown off the hinges, and we just ran and ran and ran, out of the school, out of the parking lot," unquote. I'm not exactly sure what she meant by doors blown off the hinges. As to my knowledge, there was no such damage discovered in the school following the shooting. I wonder if she was either remembering things incorrectly since she was so young, or she interpreted the shattered glass in this way. In total, 7 people in room 10 died as a result of the attack, 2 teachers and 4 students, with a 5th student later dying on the way to the hospital. Their names were Victoria Soto, Anne-Marie Murphy, Allison Wyatt, Aviel Richmond, Dylan Hockley, Jesse Lewis, and Olivia Engel. 9 children were able to escape from the room, physically unharmed. 2 students reportedly remained hidden in the bathroom located within the room until police arrived. Remembering when she and her students were still holed up in the bathroom, Caitlin Roig later stated, quote, "We were all scared. There was rapid gunfire that never seemed to stop, and I could hear people crying and pleading. I knew that I had to keep my children calm, to stop them from crying. I whispered that everything would be fine, that there were bad guys out there just now, but the good guys were coming to get us," unquote. It is unclear exactly when this happened, but sometime as the shooting was taking place, the mother of a student who was inside of the building, named Daniel, arrived at the school. The woman's name is Barbara, and she recalled the day of the attack. Quote, "It started like any other day, where I had breakfast with the kids, got Daniel on the bus, came back up to the house, and then, for whatever reason, it occurred to me, Daniel forgot his library book," unquote. She decided it would be best for her to just bring the book to the school so that he would have it with him that day. She then stated, quote, "So then, I walked from my car to the front entrance of the building, and then, at that moment, I heard the firing of a gun, and the shots being fired, and it was deafening. It was overwhelming. It was right there. I mean, it was so close. And, it was like, there was no thinking involved. It was just, run, run, as fast as you can away. And it wasn't until I ran and was hiding that I had that thought that, oh my God, Daniel's in there," unquote. She went on to say, quote, "I have this vivid memory of thinking to myself, my son is in that building, and just like wanting to go get him. And I had this other thought of, I have 2 children at home. And so there was this, dilemma. I remember this. Do I run inside and get Daniel, or do I stay alive for the children I have at home?" unquote. I read that she and another woman hid together. However, I wasn't able to learn any details about this other person. Back inside of the school, after leaving room 10, Lanza proceeded down the hallway to room 8, another first-grade classroom, taught by substitute teacher Lauren Russo, along with behavioral specialist Rachel Davino. Despite having little time to prepare, the teachers had begun to corral the students towards the back of the room and hid them in the bathroom, like what Caitlin Roig had done. According to the lead investigator's statement, the 2 teachers were actually able to fit all of the children into the space, but were unable to get themselves inside before Lanza came in. After entering the room, without hesitation, Lanza raised his weapon and rapidly discharged it, fatally shooting both adults. As stated before, the kids were crammed into the bathroom, so Lanza would have had to advance into the room to get an angle on them. As we know, he did do this, and he unloaded over 50 rounds into the small bathroom, sadly hitting 15 out of the 16 students that were inside. A student in another room close by later recalled hearing a little boy scream, quote, "Help me, I don't want to be here," unquote. Lanza then reportedly replied, quote, "Well, you're here," unquote. The student then heard several more gunshots ring out. 17 people, the 2 teachers and 15 young students who were shot in room 8, lost their lives that day. One of the students who were shot initially survived, but later passed away. One student miraculously made it out of room 8 alive and unscathed, despite the number of shots discharged. As far as I know, it was because she had played dead among her classmates in the bathroom. The people killed in this room were Lauren Russo, Rachel Davino, Anna Marquez Green, Benjamin Wheeler, Caroline Praviti, Catherine Hubbard, Charlotte Bacon, Chase Kowalski, Daniel Barden, Emily Parker, Grace McDonnell, Jack Pinto, James Mattioli, Jessica Ricos, Josephine Gay, Madeline Sue, and Noah Posner. The person I mentioned before, who was in the conference room, now holding Natalie Hammond's leg, later stated, quote, "The shooting continued with rapid fire, then a pause, rapid fire, and pause, etc. I heard the shooting coming towards us, then away from us. Then the shooting came closer to us again. I could not tell the difference in the gunfire. To me, it all sounded like rapid fire, and it just kept going. I heard children screaming throughout the incident. I felt that the event lasted at least 10 minutes. At this point, Natalie stated that she can't hold the door anymore. Blank and I then pulled Natalie away from the door, laying her flat, and I inspected her wounds. As this was going on, a parent in the room was on the phone with 911, unquote. Going off of evidence photos, after he killed those in room 8, it seems as though Lanza might have started down the hallway again, since there was a magazine and several unfired rounds discarded further past the door to the room. I'm unsure if this is the case, but I just wanted to add it in. I'm thinking that he may have been starting to head towards other classrooms, but turned around when he heard the police arriving in the parking lot, or for some other unknown reason. Either way, he backtracked down the hall and re-entered room 10, the first classroom he targeted. Again, his exact route during the shooting is very unclear, so please keep that in mind. According to official reports, it took less than 4 minutes for the first police officer to arrive at the school after the first 911 call was placed. After pulling up to the school, without knowing the dangers that lay ahead, authorities made their way to the entrance. At the time, they were unaware of the number of suspects, the type of firearms being used, or if there were any traps set up in the school. At approximately 9:40 a.m., Lanza, who was now back in room 10, surrounded by the people he just massacred, shot himself in the head with his mother's Glock 20 SF pistol. Many theorize he chose to end his life when he realized the police were closing in on the school. Sometime after his death, authorities entered the building and prepared themselves for the worst. As they entered, they discovered the bodies of Dawn Hawksprung and Mary Sherlock in the hallway, and immediately knew the situation was very dire. They cautiously continued through the school and into both rooms where the teachers and students were horrifically murdered just minutes before. In room 10, authorities found an injured student, who sadly ended up succumbing to her wounds on the way to the hospital. In room 8, they discovered the gruesome scene of all of the students compacted inside of the bathroom. There were reports that the children in this tiny room were, quote, packed like sardines, unquote. Upon this finding, they discovered a little boy under the pile of already deceased students after they heard his pained groans. Despite being found alive, he was gravely injured, and this little boy also unfortunately did not end up surviving. They also rescued the only unharmed child in the bathroom. Police officers also found the 2 students alive and unharmed in the bathroom of room 10 and swiftly evacuated them. It's reported that 49 expended rifle rounds as well as 1 or 2 expended pistol rounds were found in room 10, where Lanza ended his own life. 80 expended rifle rounds were found in room 8. It was determined that he reloaded at least twice in room 10 and at least 3 times in room 8. In total, throughout the building and outside, 154 rifle casings were found. Immediately, law enforcement began the painstaking task of clearing the entire school. After hearing noises coming from room 12, they found out that Caitlin Roig and her students were barricaded in the small bathroom located within her room. They moved the bookshelf blocking the door and knocked, letting the occupants know that it was safe for them to exit the room. Caitlin did not believe that they were the police, and absolutely refused to open the door. Eventually, the police obtained a master key and were able to unlock the door themselves. After trying to open it, however, Caitlin Roig reportedly forced the door shut once again. Law enforcement were finally able to open the door and hold it there, and this was the moment that police saw Caitlin, who was shielding her students behind her. According to police, Caitlin began to repeatedly scream, quote, "You're not the police. I don't believe you," unquote. According to the police report, they began to grab the kids and take them out of the building. All the while, Caitlin stayed inside the bathroom, still unsure if she could trust these strangers. After all the kids were out and safe, police had to physically remove Caitlin Roig from the building. Caitlin remembered this time, saying, quote, "It's impossible to describe my relief or their shock at seeing 16 of us in that tiny space. I found out later that we'd been in there for 45 minutes, but it felt like a lifetime. Looking at the children and knowing we were safe, I was just so thankful," unquote. Slowly, the authorities continued throughout the school, evacuating any remaining children and teachers they found. This is when Barbara, the mom who stumbled upon the shooting, was reunited with her son, Daniel. Thankfully, the two of them both survived the horrific incident. The survivors were escorted to the fire station on the corner of the road that led up to the school, and it was here that the surviving children were reunited with their parents. Caitlin also spoke about this, quote, "Everything was chaotic as we lined up our classes and released each child to their parents. Then it was just very eerie. I knew people were missing, but I didn't know where they were or what happened to them," unquote. SWAT also swept the building for bombs, and once they were certain that there was no active threat, crime scene investigators were tasked with the meticulous job of collecting evidence, taking crime scene photos, and reconstructing the events of that day. The classrooms in particular were in disarray, as I'm sure you can imagine. There were items scattered around the floor, shell casings strewn about, and most prominently, blood spattered everywhere along with the overpowering smell of gunpowder. Near Lanza's limp body, authorities recovered 3 weapons. The first of which was the Bushmaster rifle, it being a few feet away from Lanza, was determined to be the weapon he used during the entire shooting. They also found the Glock pistol, which was determined to have been the firearm that Lanza used to end his own pathetic life. The third gun was the Sig Sauer pistol that was still located in his left pant pocket. This gun did not seem to have been used in the attack whatsoever. Outside, in the car that Lanza drove to the school, police recovered a 4th firearm, this one being the Ishmash 12-gauge semi-automatic shotgun that I mentioned earlier, which also had not been fired at all during that day. All firearms connected to this case were legally purchased by the shooter's mother, Nancy Lanza. It was also determined that she had been the one to purchase all of the ammunition that was used during the attack. After finding the body of Adam Lanza, police quickly worked to identify him. At the beginning of the investigation, police searched Lanza's body and unknowingly discovered his older brother's ID that he had on him for some reason. This find originally led authorities to believe that the shooter was Ryan Lanza. After this mix-up, Ryan's name was leaked to the media, and so, it was broadcasted all over news channels and sites for the nation to see. Unbeknownst to Ryan, he was just named the prime suspect of one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history. Not long after discovering the ID, police descended on Ryan's home in Hoboken, New Jersey, and his workplace in New York City, over 2 hours away from Newtown. It wasn't until hours later, after Ryan was taken in for questioning, that law enforcement discovered the true identity of the shooter. However, before Ryan's name was cleared, he would receive numerous death threats on his social media pages, where he would plead his innocence to the world. I just wanted to quickly mention that I read in official reports that many officers believed there to be at least 2 shooters at the school, evident from the fact that there were multiple pieces of discarded clothing on the passenger side of the suspect's vehicle outside of the school. This was obviously not the case, and the authorities finally did rule that possibility out. Once they finally identified the shooter as Ryan's brother, Adam Lanza, the obvious next move was to go to his place of residence to see what they could find. Upon arriving and entering the home, authorities discovered the bloodied body of his mother, Nancy, upstairs in her bed. They also located that detailed spreadsheet of known killers that Lanza had previously put together. Also in the house, authorities found a check that Nancy had written out for Lanza, with the date field reading, Christmas Day. The memo line read, CZ-83, which is a type of semi-automatic pistol. They were never able to determine if Nancy ever actually gave it to her son. They also discovered the damaged hard drive that Lanza had left behind and started to attempt to extract data off of it. Along with this, they began to sift through his internet history and online activity through other avenues. According to many sources, including the official FBI report, 4 years prior to the attack, someone overheard Lanza threatening to kill his mother and shoot up Sandy Hook Elementary School. This person apparently warned the Newtown police, but according to reports, this person, quote, was told by NPD that Lanza's mother owned the guns and that there was nothing NPD could do about it, unquote. It is worth noting that I read that the police apparently had no record of this call. Moving on, almost immediately after this tragic shooting rocked the town, a conspiracy theory claiming that it was a complete hoax and never actually happened sprung up. This theory was largely made famous by Alex Jones, a highly controversial radio host and known conspiracy theorist. I am not going to go too far into detail about Alex Jones or this whole situation in general because, frankly, it is completely ludicrous, and I also just can't afford to make this video longer than it already is. But I did want to just give you a quick synopsis so that if you somehow haven't already heard about it, you will know a little about what went on. There are many ways to learn more about this, so if you are interested, please go out and do some more research on this baffling topic. One of the first direct attacks Jones put out was against the deceased 6-year-old Emily Parker's father, Robbie. He was the first family member of a victim to speak publicly, and just before he went up to speak, he let out a nervous half-laugh. This became the first, quote, evidence, unquote, of the entire event being fake, as if laughter is not a common coping mechanism, especially in times of stress or nervousness. These conspiracy theorists also started to dig into other interviews and facts about the case, claiming more supposed evidence along the way. These baseless and ridiculous claims went on for several years, all while robbing the parents and family members of the victims lost in the tragedy, their ability to grieve their unimaginable losses. Jones and his network of people continuously spread this absurd narrative that somehow convinced millions of people that this shooting was indeed completely made up. It is just so baffling how anyone could truly believe that an entire town of people, including literal children, were all fabricating this whole thing and have kept it up for years. I will talk a little more about the aftermath of these claims a little later, so make sure to stick around for that. But for now, let's move on. Daniel, the student whose mother showed up at the school while the shooting was taking place, was later interviewed and spoke about his experience on that day. He said, quote, not many people know this, only I think a few of the moms and dads and kids who were there know this, was that the speaker was on at the time, unquote. When asked if he could hear what was going on through the school's intercom speakers, Daniel said, quote, oh yeah, let's just say it was real harsh. We heard every single bullet. We heard people crying. We heard actually the people's death themselves. It was real harsh, unquote. About a year after the tragedy occurred, some parents were interviewed. Among them was Jesse Lewis's mother, Scarlett. She recalled the start to the day that her son was taken from the world. Quote, I walked Jesse out, as I usually do, and then I remember turning around and seeing that Jesse had written on my car, I love you, with little hearts etched in the windows in the frost. I was so present that I thought, this is a moment. This is one of those moments. You need to capture it. He had these goofy teeth in, that you really can't tell in the picture because it's overexposed, and Jesse loved these goofy teeth. He wore them all the time, not just on Halloween. And then, I just took him, hugged him, said have a great day, I'll see you tomorrow night, and off he went with his dad, unquote. She then talked about what she remembered from the rest of the day, quote, I went to work as usual, and this instant message popped up. There's been a shooting at a school in Newtown, and I was like, I didn't think that it was real, unquote. She then found out that a teacher had been shot in the foot, which was apparently one of the first pieces of news to break in this case. She said, quote, I thought, well, it's a situation with a boyfriend, A jealous boyfriend came, shot the teacher in the foot, which is horrible, but, we'll just go pick up Jesse. He'll probably need to be consoled. I'm sure it was a scary situation, unquote. She then spoke about arriving at the school with Jesse's older brother and heading to the firehouse where the authorities were keeping the children evacuated from the school for the time being. She stated, quote, so, I'm seeing happy reunions, and I'm just looking for Jesse's head, in this sea of people and kids, coming in. and I don't see him, but I'm not particularly panicked," unquote. When she wasn't able to find her son, Scarlett began to walk around and ask anyone if they had seen him lately. With no luck, she began to make her way towards the school. She recalled this time saying, quote, "This big guy with grenades strapped to his belt, and probably an AK-47 or something over his shoulder said, 'I'm sorry, I can't let you through.' And I said, 'Well, I'm just looking for my son, and he's not at the firehouse, so I'm thinking he's at the school, and I'm gonna go get him," unquote. The man still did not let her pass and explained that they were still in the process of sweeping the school and that some students were still hiding. Scarlett stated, quote, "I thought, oh, of course, Protector Jesse. He's hiding somewhere, and it's gonna take them hours to find him because he's so resourceful." I don't think my brain was fully functioning in a cognitive sort of way right then. And there was a doctor that, I guess he was a doctor, that walked up to us. He knelt down on one knee and just said, "There's no easy way to say this. Your son's dead," unquote. Upon hearing this earth-shattering news, Scarlett turned to her older son and hugged him tight. Jesse's father also spoke about his experience after finding out he lost his son. He reported holding his dead body and being able to see the bullet hole in his head. Lauren Russo's brother Andrew also spoke out about his memory of that day. Andrew said, quote, "I woke up to a text message from a friend of mine, saying there was like a school shooting, and then watching the news. Even at that moment, I was like, oh, Lauren's fine. Don't worry about it. Just, played it off fine," unquote. Even without hearing from his sister for a few hours following the news of the shooting, Andrew was not worried. He just thought that Lauren would obviously be busy trying to get everything figured out, and that was why the family hadn't heard from her yet. As the day went on, his hopes dwindled a bit, but he remained as positive as he could about the situation. He went to work, but by the time he got off, he had a horrible feeling about the entire thing. Through building tears, Andrew said, quote, "Around like 8:30, I was able to get out of work. At that moment, I was freaking out. It kind of hit me out of nowhere," unquote. He arrived home and was met with his other brother, who had already heard the news of their sister, Lauren's death. It was then that Andrew was informed that she had passed away. Rachel Davino's sister later recalled the moment that the family learned that the shooting took place. Her sister said, quote, "That morning, my mom drove me to a doctor's appointment in West Hartford, as she did every week. Later, I was supposed to hang out with one of my girlfriends at my house. When Mom and I got back home, my friend was already there. She looked shaken and told us, 'I have to go. I can't hang out today. I just got word there was a shooting at my nephew's school.' That school was Sandy Hook Elementary. My mom and I were in so much pain for her, seeing her look so distraught. We told her, 'Go, go, go.' We go inside the house and turn on the news. We begin to hear aerial sounds above the house. Minutes later, Rachel's boyfriend, Anthony Saratelli, rushed into the living room. We all lived together, and he goes, 'That's Rachel's school.' We thought Rachel was at Newtown Elementary School the entire time, but it was that very second we learned she had switched to Sandy Hook less than a week earlier," unquote. Rachel's sister then recalled the events following the discovery. They desperately tried to get into contact with her, but after receiving no response for a while, they made their way down to City Hall. They were then directed to the firehouse near the school, and subsequently raced there. They watched as parents were reunited with their kids, but they also witnessed the heartbreaking reality of people being told that their children were no longer alive. This obviously made them nervous about Rachel, but they tried to remain positive. By 9 that night, they still had no word on her status. Rachel's family stuck around the firehouse, and her sister later stated, quote, "Because Rachel was so new, her name wasn't on any list, but the officers knew they had a family looking for a Rachel Davino, and they knew they had a body whose name they didn't know, but they didn't want to tell us anything until they were sure." Finally, an officer walks over to us. It must have been killing this man to watch us wonder all day. When he got to where we were, I assume he broke every protocol when he said, "Anybody who was in that school, and we don't know who they are, is gone." I collapsed on my mother. We screamed on top of each other. A priest came over, put his hands on us, and said a prayer. I grabbed his hand," unquote. After this absolutely heart-wrenching moment, Rachel's family headed home. It was later that night that they received a knock at the door. Her sister said, quote, "There are police officers, social workers, and that same priest at our door. They hand us a packet on how to go about making funeral arrangements. That was our confirmation. Rachel had been identified by her tattoos," unquote. Reading the accounts of that day from family members was really upsetting. I just cannot imagine going through something like this. Just 2 days after the shooting, multiple people in Newtown, Connecticut started to receive very worrying and threatening phone calls. One call went, quote, "This is Adam Lanza. I'm going to kill you. You're dead. You're dead. You hear me? You're dead," unquote. Another went, quote, "This is Adam Lanza. I'm going to kill you. You're dead. With my machine gun. You're dead," unquote. Eventually, this caller was identified as 31-year-old Wilfredo Cardenas Hoffman. During the investigation, it was revealed that, from his home in Venezuela, Hoffman made over 90 threatening phone calls to about 47 different Newtown phone numbers, though not all of them were answered. Hoffman was arrested on June 21, 2014, and was subsequently convicted and sentenced to 1 year and 1 day in prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. Following the tragedy, Sandy Hook Elementary School was demolished in 2013. A new school was built in its place, though it didn't open up until 4 years after the tragedy. 2 years after the shooting, in 2014, Connecticut's Office of the Child Advocate put together and released a report covering Lanza's mental health profile. This report's purpose was not to figure out why Lanza committed the attack, but to rather document the missed opportunities in his life. This is one of the reports that I referenced heavily while writing the script for this case. It's pretty long and took a while to go through, but I found it to be incredibly insightful, especially on Lanza's childhood and teenage years. Those who wrote the report were unable to find any significant tragic or traumatic events in Lanza's early life that would explain why he turned out to be the way he was, and to go on to do what he did. As mentioned at the beginning of this video, Lanza struggled immensely with many different mental issues, but none of them explained his later actions. The report highlighted the fact that his parents pushed to get him extra help during the time he was beginning his schooling. However, it's also noted that his parents, as well as the education system, failed to continue getting him evaluated as his life went on. The report makes it clear that there needs to be a better bridge between families and trained professionals, whether they be pediatricians, mental health experts, specialists, etc. Much of the time, parents don't know what to do in situations such as Adam's, or they don't know what type of help that kids like him need. The report goes pretty far into detail about what this might look like, but I want to focus mainly on Lanza's case in particular, so let's move on. Though Adam Lanza did have significant mental difficulties, no professional that he ever spoke to reported having any clue that he would go on to do something so horrific. There were apparently no warning signs observed by anyone around him that he would commit what is still known as one of the worst attacks in US history. Cases like these are extremely hard to cover. Not only did 20 absolutely innocent children lose their entire future, but also 7 adults' lives came to an end with seemingly no reason. To this day, a motive has never been identified. Some speculate that changes in his life, such as possibly moving away, triggered a resentment or anger towards his mother, which pushed him to commit this unthinkable act. That still wouldn't explain the actions he took after killing his mom, though. I would really like to know what you guys think the motive was, if there even was one at all. In an interview with the New Yorker magazine, Adam's father, Peter, expressed his thought that his life would have also come to an end if he was in the house that day. He said, quote, "With hindsight, I know Adam would have killed me in a heartbeat if he'd had the chance. I don't question that for a minute," unquote. Peter also maintains the idea that the shooting could not have been prevented, and he said, quote, "You can't get any more evil. How much do I beat up on myself about the fact that he's my son? A lot," unquote. Peter also told the magazine that he believes that the reason Lanza shot his mother 4 times was because each bullet represented a member of the family: Peter, Nancy, Ryan, and Adam himself. During the interview, Peter directly said that he wishes his son was never born. He stated, quote, "That didn't come right away. That's not a natural thing when you're thinking about your kid," but God. There's no question. There can only be one conclusion when you finally get there. That's fairly recent too, but that's totally where I am." Unquote. Peter maintains that he will never reveal what he did for Adam's funeral. Nothing can be done to bring back the 27 people who very sadly lost their lives on December 14th, 2012. But as always, I want to dedicate a part of the video to their memories, starting with the 6 staff members killed at Sandy Hook Elementary School. I will be going over what came out of this horrific attack, as well as the whole deal with Alex Jones and the supposed hoax after I talk about the victims. So please make sure to stick around for that. Dawn Allison Lafferty Hawksprung was born on June 28, 1965, in Towanda, Pennsylvania. She was 47 years old at the time of her death. Dawn was a single mother to 2 daughters, Erica and Tina. Though it is incredibly hard to be a single parent as it is, Dawn was described by her children as an incredible mother. Her daughter Erica later stated, quote, "Every practice, she was there. All of my sister's cheerleading stuff, she was there. Every dance competition. She was doing homework on the bleachers, but she was there, and she was my rock," unquote. Dawn really put the effort in to better her and her kids' lives. She attended night classes at 2 colleges, eventually earning her bachelor's degree at Central Connecticut State University. According to one source, she then began her teaching career and reportedly loved every minute of it. She quickly came to the conclusion that the salary that she was earning at the time was not enough to support her and her 2 young daughters, so Dawn decided to go back to school to become an administrator. She completed her schooling once again, this time earning a master's degree at Southern Connecticut State University. Eventually, Dawn met and got married to a man named George. Dawn remained extremely hardworking and motivated up until her death. A friend of hers from high school remembered Dawn as full of life, always wearing a smile on her face, no matter the time or place. It seems as though she kept this personality later into her life, because those that worked alongside Dawn at Sandy Hook Elementary also reported the same thing. Those that knew Dawn described her as being born to become an educator. She was dedicated to her job, moving up the ladder until she became a principal. She then began to work at Sandy Hook Elementary School in 2010, only 2 years before her unfortunate death. She had a Twitter account where she would post about ongoing and upcoming events at the school. Her last post was made on December 13th, 2012, one day before she was killed, and it reads, quote, "Setting up for the Sandy Hook nonfiction book preview for staff. Common Core, here we come," unquote. Dawn was clearly very dedicated to her school and was an exceptional person. Anyone who knew her was incredibly blessed to have met her. In her honor, her family established the Dawn Lafferty Hawksprung Memorial Fund. Mary Joy Sherlock was 56 years old when her life ended and was born on February 11, 1956. In December of 1976, Mary met her future husband, William. Together, they later became parents to 2 daughters, Maura and Katie. Mary began working at Sandy Hook Elementary School in 1994, 18 years before she would be killed in that very school. Right after starting this new job, Mary reportedly jumped right into her role as the school's psychologist. She was described as very focused on being there for the kids who might need her expertise. She was also said to be a naturally warm and comforting person, which definitely helped her to get closer with the students. Her husband William later stated, quote, "It was her school. It was all about the kids. Her ideal day would be working with kids the entire time she was there, as opposed to paperwork and reports," unquote. Mary also was said to be a source of comfort for her colleagues, as well as the parents that she came into contact with through her role in the school. Though she was incredibly dedicated to her school and the children that attended it, she had begun thinking about retirement in the time before her death. According to her husband, she was likely going to finally retire within the next year, sometime in 2013. Following her death, Mary's daughter said, quote, "There are no words to describe the devastating loss that we feel at this time. Our family has lost a loving mother, dedicated wife, and above all, a wonderful, caring woman who was beyond dedicated to her students," unquote. Overall, Mary was an incredibly devoted person to not only her family, but also those she cared for at school, including every student in attendance. Mary's husband co-founded the Sandy Hook Promise. This foundation is focused on making progress against the very real problem of gun violence. I will talk more about it in just a little bit. Along with this, her family established Mary's Fund, which focuses on providing access to mental health help for families of vulnerable children that cannot afford it. Victoria Lee Soto was 27 years old, born on November 4, 1985. All throughout her life, Victoria loved the holidays, especially Christmas. Her family later recalled that she was the one to organize all of the family events. After graduating from Stratford High School in 2003, she attended Eastern Connecticut State University, earning a bachelor's degree in education and history. She then attended Southern Connecticut State University for graduate school. After becoming a teacher, Victoria took the role very seriously, while also bringing fun and excitement to the classroom. On a website dedicated to her memory, it reads, quote, "She prided herself on being the cool teacher at school and loved to make the kids smile and laugh. Spirit Week was one of her favorite times, dressing up in mismatched outfits, crazy hair, or anything to make the kids laugh. She was the first one at school every day and the last to leave, planning each day to be the best it could be," unquote. She truly was a one-of-a-kind teacher who went above and beyond to make her students feel welcomed, safe, happy, and excited about learning. Her family later stated that they were not shocked to learn that Victoria did her best to protect her students up until her last breath, because that was just the kind of person she always was. After her death, Victoria's family set up a foundation in her name, the Vicky Soto Memorial Fund. It was established to provide scholarships to those wanting to become educators, as well as offering general support to teachers. Anne Marie Murphy was born on July 25, 1960, and was 52 years old at the time of her death. After graduating from high school, Anne Marie attended Southern Connecticut State University, eventually earning a degree in education. During her life, Anne Marie had a love for the arts. She also enjoyed taking outdoor walks, and of course adored her family. Her father later described her as witty, artistic, and hardworking. At some point in her life, Anne Marie got married to a man named Michael, and they went on to have 4 children together. Though information on Anne Marie was quite limited compared to the other victims, it is clear that she was a very compassionate and loving woman, as she was the one to hold Dylan Hockley in her arms, attempting to protect him that day. For that, she will always be remembered. It seems as though Anne Marie's family has opted to retain privacy after her death, but I was able to find that in 2013, the Connecticut Para-Educator of the Year Award was renamed to the Anne Marie Murphy Para-Educator of the Year Award in her honor. 30-year-old Lauren Gabrielle Russo was born on June 8, 1982. One source states that Lauren apparently knew she wanted to one day become a teacher, even before completing kindergarten. As a young child, she would line her dolls up in front of a chalkboard and pretend to teach them. Her mother, Terry, remembers how fun, spunky, noisy, and feisty Lauren was growing up, but also explained that she was sweet, caring, and social. This became apparent to me while reading up on Lauren's life. All throughout her school years, she participated in countless activities, including singing in musicals, dancing in recitals, and being part of the soccer team. She was also a part of the National Honor Society at her school, and also participated in the yearbook committee. In high school, Lauren volunteered with the Little Hatters Learning Center. The program offered there gave high schoolers who were interested in later becoming teachers hands-on experience with infants, toddlers, and preschoolers. After graduating, Lauren earned a degree in English and psychology from the University of Connecticut. Lauren then earned her master's degree and worked 3 jobs while searching for a school to begin teaching at. Finally, in October of 2012, Lauren was offered a position as a full-time substitute teacher at Sandy Hook Elementary School. It just so happens that the day of the shooting, Friday, December 14th, was her first day officially working in a classroom. She had made plans with her boyfriend to go watch The Hobbit in theaters after the school day was over, and had even made special Hobbit-themed cupcakes to enjoy after the movie. As we all know, she never got to enjoy any of these plans, as she was very unfortunately killed that day. Her mother, Terry, kept some of the cupcakes in her freezer, years after her daughter's death. According to one report, she still has some Christmas cookies that Lauren brought her as well. Her mother said, quote, "We will miss her terribly, and will take comfort knowing that she had achieved that dream," unquote. It's devastating to think about the fact that her chosen career had started on the day that she was so sadly killed. She seemed like an amazing person, who would have really made a difference as a teacher. I read that in honor of Lauren, 2 scholarships were set up in her name, in order to help offset the cost for those wanting to become elementary school teachers. Rachel Marie Davino was born on July 17, 1983, making her only 29 years old at the time of her death. Anyone who knew Rachel would tell you that she had many hobbies and interests. She reportedly loved baking, cooking, photography, and karate, to name a few. I also read that she absolutely loved animals. According to her obituary, Rachel adored her younger siblings and cared for them like they were her own children. Her natural maternal nature extended into her career as a behavioral therapist for children within the autism spectrum. By the age of 29, Rachel had already earned her bachelor's and master's degree and was working on attaining her doctorate. At the time of her death, Rachel was only days away from becoming a board-certified behavioral analyst. Rachel held various positions throughout her career as a behavioral therapist and was said to have integrated the children she treated into her daily life. She would often host holiday and craft parties in her home for the kids, treating them like family. Her sister described her as, quote, "bright and focused, an independent thinker who was always driven and always had a heart to help others, even before herself," unquote. Only about 1 week before she was killed, Rachel began her job as a teacher's aide at Sandy Hook Elementary School. She was so excited to dive into this new group of children, eager to help any of them that were in need. Rachel truly had an amazing gift, which helped propel her into her passion of helping children who needed it. She seems like such an understanding and caring person, someone perfect for the role that she filled. Rachel's sister later made a statement about her saying, quote, "I believe the day Rachel left us, she became my guardian angel. I've survived overdoses where there was no medical explanation as to why. I was told since I was a teenager I'd never carry a pregnancy to term. Now, I'm a mom," unquote. Rachel's boyfriend, Anthony, was actually planning on proposing to her on Christmas Eve, just 10 days after she lost her life. A scholarship for those seeking to earn their Applied Behavior Analysis certificate was created in Rachel's name. Unfortunately, nearly 12 years after Rachel's death, her sister Sarah also passed away on July 8th of this year. Now I want to share with you a little bit about each student that was senselessly killed on that day. Charlotte Helen Bacon was born on February 22, 2006, and was 6 years old at the time of her death. Anyone that knew Charlotte could tell you that she absolutely adored animals. She apparently never met an animal that she didn't love. Of course, it's not surprising to learn that she wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up. Her uncle later said, quote, "She was going to go some places in this world. This little girl could light up the room for anyone," unquote. Following her death, a foundation was created in her name, dedicated to supporting the things that Charlotte loved in life. They have many different programs and have done a lot for the community and beyond, including awarding 16 scholarships to veterinary students and raising over $40,000 for grief support. 7-year-old Daniel Gerard Barden was born on September 27, 2005. By all accounts, Daniel was an exceptional kid. I think his personality was best described by his family when they said, quote, "Words really cannot express what a special boy Daniel was. Such a light, always smiling, unfailingly polite, incredibly affectionate, fair and so thoughtful towards others, imaginative in play, both intelligent and articulate in conversation, in all, a constant source of laughter and joy," unquote. Daniel was an incredibly caring child, always looking out for others. Those who knew him said that Daniel harbored a ton of wisdom and empathy for his young age. Daniel's father co-founded the Sandy Hook Promise, and both of his parents are on the board of directors for the foundation. Olivia Rose Engel was born on July 18, 2006, making her 6 years old when she was killed. It was said that Olivia was an artistic child who loved making crafts and attending art class. She was also very active and liked to play tennis, soccer, and also swim. Her family released a statement following her death, and part of it reads, quote, Olivia was smart, bubbly, and unbelievably entertaining. Her physical loss will be felt every day by those who loved her most, but her sparkly spirit will live on, unquote. She was a sweet little girl, described as kind, grateful, appreciative, and the opposite of greedy. A website was created to honor Olivia's memory, and I implore you to read more about the special little girl that she was. Josephine Grace Gay had just celebrated her 7th birthday on December 11th, 3 days before her death. She was set to have a party celebrating her birthday on the day after her death. Josephine was said to have been a gift to the world, always exhibiting a joyful and giving spirit. She was described as incredibly sweet, friendly, kind, bubbly, and giggly. She was on the autism spectrum and was unable to speak due to her apraxia, but that didn't stop her from expressing herself in other ways, such as sign language or her hugs. Her inability to speak also didn't prohibit her from wanting to connect with those around her and showing that she cared about them. It was said that Josephine absolutely loved her parents, sisters, family, teachers, and friends. Her family started Joey's Fund, which focuses on helping families in New England gather support for people with autism. Her mother also co-founded Safe and Sound Schools, which I will talk about in a little bit. Ana Grace Marquez Green was 6 years old when she passed away, born on April 4, 2006. She was the daughter of a jazz musician and had her own musical talents. She reportedly loved to sing at home with her brother. Part of her obituary reads, quote, "From an early age, Ana was a radiant songbird in a family nestling in melodies. Her love for music was apparent even before words could shape her lips. Her joy for song echoed by her father, a renowned jazz saxophonist. She danced to the rhythm of life, from room to room, place to place, her light footsteps a testament to the music that played ceaselessly in her heart," unquote. Her family had moved down to Connecticut from Canada only 2 months prior, with one reason being Sandy Hook's amazing reputation. 2 years after her death, Ana's father released an album in her memory called Beautiful Life. Her family established the Ana Grace Project after her death to honor her, and part of it focuses on support for music and arts programs. Dylan Christopher Jack Hockley was born on March 8, 2006, and was 6 years old when he was killed. He and his family were originally from England, but had moved to the area 2 years prior to the shooting. Dylan had special needs, but from what the family said, it seems like he and his brother both flourished at Sandy Hook Elementary School. Dylan was currently in the process of learning to read, and was said to have been a very happy kid, always filled with joy. His developmental disability did not stop Dylan from living his life to the fullest. I read that his family made it known that the 4 staff members also killed in the shooting, Dawn, Mary, Victoria, and Anne-Marie, all made sure that Dylan had a great experience at the school. Dylan was the one who passed away while in Anne-Marie's arms. His parents later stated, quote, "We take great comfort in knowing that Dylan was not alone when he died. Dylan loved Mrs. Murphy so much and pointed at her picture on our refrigerator every day," unquote. In his memory, a nonprofit foundation called Dylan's Wings of Change was created. His mother also co-founded the Sandy Hook Promise, along with Daniel Barden's father. 6-year-old Madeline Feng Su was born on July 10, 2006. Madeline had several hobbies and passions, some of which included wearing floral dresses, playing with dogs, listening to and playing music, swimming, and reading. Part of her obituary reads, quote, "She was a beautiful, bright, and joyful middle child. For Madeline, everything in life was an adventure. She did everything with enthusiasm and determination, and was a natural-born leader. She was kind and compassionate, too," unquote. She was said to have adored her 2 sisters. Even though they each had separate rooms, the 3 of them would opt to sleep in the same bed every night, not wanting to be separated. Less than 2 years following her death, on June 1, 2014, a playground was built and opened in her memory. Catherine Violet Hubbard was 6 years old when she lost her life and was born on June 8, 2006. Catherine had a special sense of compassion and kindness towards everyone, but her bond with animals was unmatched. In pursuit of her desire to provide a safe haven for animals and give them a loving home, Catherine dreamed of one day owning her own animal shelter. I read that she even created business cards for her future business, and I just thought that was so adorable. Her mother stated, quote, "Catherine's mission in life was simple. She wanted animals to know that she was kind, and that in her care, they'd be safe," unquote. In line with this statement, and everything this little girl stood for, the Catherine Violet Hubbard Animal Sanctuary was founded by her mother, dedicating support to anything having to do with animals, including providing education about and care for the animals in the community. 7-year-old Chase Michael Anthony Kowalski was born on October 31st, 2005. Chase was a very athletic kid who participated in community road races and also loved baseball. He was very optimistic and caring, with part of his obituary reading, quote, "He could find enthusiasm in almost anything. Nothing could bring this little boy down. He was the embodiment of the childlike spirit. He would mark off the days on his calendar every morning, often writing extra things on the dates, such as, 'I love Erin Day' for his sister. Every day on his calendar was colored in, until the very last colored square, December 14th, 2012, unquote. A neighbor of the family later spoke about Chase, saying, quote, "You couldn't think of a better child," unquote. The neighbor recalled a recent conversation he had with the young boy. While speaking with him, Chase told the neighbor how he had just won his first mini triathlon. Chase was almost always outside, whether it was playing ball in the yard or riding his bike up and down the street. He was said to have had a very competitive personality when it came to sports. A foundation was also set up in Chase's memory, with the website saying, quote, "We are committed to inspiring community healing through family-focused triathlon events and wellness initiatives," unquote. Jesse McCord Lewis was born on June 30th, 2006, making him 6 years old when he passed away. Jesse was someone that you always expected to have a smile on his face. He was described as radiant, and it was said that he illuminated the world around him with his glowing presence. His family later stated that Jesse was always up for an adventure, especially with his older brother. Jesse was very excited to go to school that day, since the class was making gingerbread houses together. He loved the holidays, so it's not hard to imagine that he was super pumped to do this activity. His father later expressed his regret for sending Jesse to school that day. He was going to keep him at home, but knowing Jesse wanted to make the gingerbread houses with his class, his father decided to send him. He saved lives when he stood up and yelled for his fellow classmates to run, and for that, he will always be remembered as the little hero he was. As I'm sure you expected by this point, a foundation was also set up inspired by Jesse, called the Choose Love Movement. 6-year-old James Radley Mattioli was born on March 22, 2006. James had many hobbies, including singing, doing crafts with his sister, and eating ham sandwiches from Subway with his family. They describe him as a very caring kid, and even mentioned that he had recently told his parents not to get him a gift so that he could use the money to buy something for his grandfather instead. A statement released after his death read, quote, "James was especially thoughtful and considerate, always the first to welcome guests at the back door with a hug and his contagious smile," unquote. He was described as a very adventurous boy, always ready to take on anything. As far as I can tell, an annual 5K run is held in James's honor, though I don't see anything posted to the Facebook page from last year. There was also a fund set up in his name. Grace Audrey McDonnell was born on November 4th, 2005, and was 7 years old when she sadly passed away. Described as a very artistic girl, Grace dreamed of one day becoming a painter when she grew up. Her personality reflected her colorful passion, as she was said to brighten up anyone's day. Her family said, quote, "Our daughter Grace was the love and light of our family. Words cannot adequately express our sense of loss." Her obituary states that Grace once painted a lime green and cerulean blue owl, which ultimately made its home in then President Obama's study, a reminder of the creative and passionate girl she was. I read that her parents set up a memorial fund in her name, providing scholarships for artists, as well as supporting various art camps. Emily Alice Parker was 6 years old when she died, born on May 12, 2006. Her father described her as an incredibly loving and bright kid, who often put others before herself. Her father stated, quote, "My daughter Emily would be one of the first ones to be standing and giving support to all the victims, because that's the kind of kid she is," unquote. Emily was a very creative girl, and was always seen carrying her art supplies around, wherever she went. She had even created a card to put into her recently deceased grandfather's casket. In fact, she was known to always be up for creating a card for anyone who was down. All she wanted was everyone around her to be happy. This care for others included her sisters, who she loved very dearly. I did read about an organization founded after her death, called the Emily Parker Art Connection. According to her memorial Facebook page, the organization focuses on connecting children who have suffered from trauma and abuse to art therapy. Her mother also co-founded Safe and Sound Schools with Josephine's mom. 6-year-old Jack Armistead Pinto was born on May 6, 2006. His family described him as an inspirational and energetic kid who loved skiing, football, wrestling, reading, and school as a whole. After his death, one of Jack's favorite football players, Victor Cruz, wore cleats that had, quote, "Jack Pinto my hero," unquote, written on them. Victor paid tribute to Jack during a game following the shooting, and even spent some time with his family. Jack's love for sports wasn't the only thing that he was known for, though, as he was described as kind and compassionate to everyone around him. His family later spoke about Jack, saying, quote, "He had a wide smile that would simply light up the room, and while we are all uncertain as to how we will ever cope without him, we choose to remember and celebrate his life, not dwelling on the loss, but instead on the gift that we were given and will forever cherish in our hearts forever," unquote. A fund set up in Jack's name gifted more than 400 children the opportunity to play the sports that he enjoyed during his life. Noah Samuel Posner was born on November 20th, 2006, and was 6 years old at the time of his death. Noah was said to have been a very rambunctious child and was described as a big ball of energy, but he was also said to be equally smart and sweet. I read that Noah would always make sure to tell his mom that he loved her more when she expressed her love for him. He attended Sandy Hook Elementary School with his twin sister Ariel, who was unharmed in the attack. He and Ariel got along amazingly and were described as best friends. In fact, Ariel just recently spoke out about her beloved twin brother. She said, quote, "I try to talk about Noah so that he doesn't become lost with time and memory, and I feel more connected to him when I'm speaking about him and honoring him. I feel like his soul is intertwined with mine, even if we never got to know each other. He will always be my twin brother," unquote. After Noah's death, his father founded the Honor Network, which specifically went after the conspiracy theorists who spread the rumor of the shooting being a hoax. They also provide education and resources to other victims. Caroline Phoebe Previti was 6 years old when she was killed and was born on September 7th, 2006. She was said to have loved to draw and dance, and was also described as having a smile that brought happiness to the world. She enjoyed participating in activities such as swimming, gymnastics, soccer, and Girl Scouts. But she herself also strived to bring happiness to those who needed it. Part of her obituary reads, quote, "At just 5 years old, Caroline's selfless gesture extended beyond her immediate circle. Before Christmas, she emptied her piggy bank and brought all her money to their church, where she donated it to a fund that provided toys for less fortunate children. Her desire to ensure that every child had a present under the tree exemplified her caring nature and her wish to spread joy to others," unquote. She was clearly such a sweet kid who deserved so much better. A foundation was set up in Caroline's honor, which supports children wanting to participate in extracurricular activities whose parents don't have the funds to pay for them. 6-year-old Jessica Adrienne Ricos was born on May 10th, 2006. Jessica absolutely loved horses, with her family saying, quote, "She devoted her free time to watching horse movies, reading horse books, drawing horses, and writing stories about horses," unquote. I read that she was promised by her parents that she could have her very own horse when she turned 10 years old, and she was clearly incredibly excited for that day to come. It's devastating that she never got to experience that dream. Beyond her love for horses, Jessica was also said to have loved orca whales. She, of course, also cared for her younger brothers immensely and loved to play with them. Her family said, quote, "We cannot imagine our life without her. We are mourning her loss, sharing our beautiful memories we have of her, and trying to help her brother Travis understand why he can't play with his best friend," unquote. Though her initial foundation has since closed down, her family directs those who wish to donate to her to instead donate to the Whale and Dolphin Conservation in her name. Avielle Rose Richman was 6 years old at the time of her death, born on October 17, 2006. She and her family had moved to Connecticut less than 2 years before the tragedy occurred. Avielle's diverse set of hobbies included music, cooking, archery, and kung fu. Her personality was described as Spitfire, and she was said to have been a wonderful child. Her family had this to say about her, quote, "She offered her heart to everyone. With an infectious smile and peals of laughter, people were drawn to her beautiful spirit, which will live on in all of our hearts," unquote. She was said to have taken her parents' rules very seriously and was a well-mannered little girl. Her family created the Avielle Initiative at the University of Colorado, which supported projects to study the neuroscience behind violence and the risk factors associated with it. Their hope was to learn more about what leads someone to commit acts such as the attack which took Avielle from this world. Benjamin Andrew Wheeler was born on September 12, 2006, and was 6 years old when he passed away. Ben was a great student, putting a lot of effort into his classwork. He also brought that enthusiasm to his hobbies, which were soccer and swimming, as he was a very active kid. Ben reportedly looked up to his older brother Nate, and before leaving for school the morning of the shooting, Ben told his mom, quote, "I still want to be an architect, but I also want to be a paleontologist, because that's what Nate is going to be, and I want to do everything Nate does," unquote. Ben absolutely loved lighthouses, which he even decorated his room with. Following his death, Ben's parents established a nonprofit called Ben's Lighthouse. The website reads, quote, "We strive to create safe and supportive spaces for developing empathy and empowering it into action. We help young people find their unique ability to make a difference in the world, to be beacons of hope and change, to stand tall and shine bright," unquote. And finally, 6-year-old Allison Noel Wyatt was born on July 3, 2006. Allison was described by her family as incredibly kind. They said, quote, "She loved her family and teachers especially, but would often surprise us with random acts of kindness, once even offering her snacks to a complete stranger on a plane," unquote. Allison was also creative and plastered her artwork all over the walls at home. Her final drawing was made for her teacher, Victoria Soto, and was signed, quote, "I love you, love Allie," unquote. Her family stated, quote, "Allison made the world a better place for 6 far too short years, and we now have to figure out how to move on without her. She was a sweet, creative, funny, intelligent little girl who had an amazing life ahead of her. Our world is a lot darker now that she's gone. We love and miss her so much," unquote. In Allison's honor, a playground was built, and an art scholarship at the University of Florida was set up. I will put links that I can find to all of the foundations and organizations set up in memory of the victims in the description, so that you can check them out if you'd like to. In August of 2021, construction on a memorial dedicated to the 26 lives lost in the elementary school began. It took a while to complete the $3.7 million project, but in August of 2022, it was finally finished. After a private opening ceremony with the families of the victims, it was opened to the public on November 13th, 2022. Nestled in between trees, the main feature of the memorial is a beautiful water basin. The outer edge is engraved with the 20 children's names and the 6 educators' names who sadly passed away in the school. In the center of the pool, a young sycamore tree was planted. Surrounding the basin are benches to sit on, various plants and flowers, as well as a series of paths circling the memorial. The new Sandy Hook School is visible from the site. Though Nancy is often seen as more of an accomplice rather than as a victim, since she did contribute to Lanza's deteriorated mental health, I still wanted to add her into this section. At the end of the day, she did lose her life at the hands of her son, who she seemed to love dearly. Nancy Jean Lanza was born on September 6, 1960, and was 52 years old when her own son murdered her. She and her husband Peter got married in 1981, and as we know, went on to have 2 sons. She attended the University of New Hampshire and worked at a life insurance company, but eventually stopped working to take care of the home and kids. She enjoyed gardening, traveling, and going to shooting ranges. She also reportedly did a lot of charity work, mainly in women's shelters. She was a mother who clearly did care for her sons, despite her very crucial mistakes. The casualties of this event don't end there, though, because on March 25th, 2019, 7 years after 6-year-old Avielle Richmond's death, her father, 49-year-old Jeremy Richmond, committed suicide. His wife later stated, quote, "He succumbed to the grief that he could not escape," unquote. It has now been nearly 12 years since this horrific tragedy took place. The children who lost their lives would have been 18 or 19 years old if they were alive today. In addition to this, their class graduated from high school on June 12th of this year. It was a bittersweet event, with many mixed emotions felt. On one hand, the survivors, along with their families, wanted to celebrate this momentous occasion. But on the other, they reflected on the 20 lives that were lost before they made it to this accomplishment. One of the survivors from Victoria Soto's room said that she likes to think that the children lost to this attack were with the graduating class as they walked across the stage. Many of the survivors plan to become therapists in order to help children through grief like they went through. Others want to become attorneys and politicians, eager to advocate for better gun laws in the future. To honor those who lost their lives, their names were read aloud during the graduation ceremony. The fallen students' names were also listed with the graduating class, which I find to be very sweet. It goes without saying that each and every one of them deserved to be there that day. My heart breaks for everyone involved in this senseless attack. I can't even begin to imagine how it would feel to lose a family member, let alone an innocent child in a horrific way such as this. Please take a moment to remember all of the victims in this case. They deserve to live out the rest of their lives, and sadly, that chance was ripped away from them by someone who had no reason for doing what he did. As if it wasn't bad enough to lose a child or family member in this way, as I mentioned a little while ago, the victims' families were absolutely tormented for several years following the shooting. I do want to make it clear that the Sandy Hook shooting was not the only national tragedy that Jones targeted, but obviously, that is what we are focusing on today. I just want to quickly touch on some of the effects that Alex Jones, his followers, and the maliciously false and damaging claims had on those affected by the shooting. As mentioned before, Robbie Parker's nervous laugh before his initial statement was scrutinized repeatedly by Jones. This extended to other victims' families' interviews, as they were constantly accused of being crisis actors. The years following the deaths of their family members brought relentless online abuse, including personal threats. Comments and posts popped up repeatedly, making accusations that none of the children ever existed in the first place, that the whole thing was a massive, fabricated lie. These attacks soon migrated off of cyberspace, as the families began to deal with stalking and threats being spewed at them in real life. In one case, Robbie Parker was visiting Seattle, Washington, on the complete opposite side of the country, over 2,800 miles away, 4 years after his daughter, Emily, was killed in the shooting. While walking around, a man recognized Robbie and went up to him and publicly accused him of lying about Emily's death. The family of Daniel Barden received a letter at their home, which claimed that the author had actually gone to Daniel's grave and urinated on it, since they truly believed no one was buried in that spot. Another letter that they received stated that the author was going to dig Daniel's grave up, to prove that there was no little boy buried there. Alex Jones and his network, as well as others, would gather images of the victims and use them in their content while spreading the blatant misinformation. One of the victims, Noah Posner's photos were used frequently. Noah's father, Lenny, and a group of volunteers from the Honor Network took it upon themselves to sweep thousands of videos, articles, and other posts using Noah's photos and get them taken down. Obviously, this fueled conspiracy theorists such as Jones to believe this was part of the hoax. According to them, this forced removal of their content was in direct violation of their First Amendment rights. Jones and his followers targeted Lenny Posner over this, which drove him into hiding, and it's reported that he and his family had to move several times after this. His personal information such as his address, phone number, and even social security number were posted online over and over. Lenny's family was also targeted in this way. Lenny never really felt safe, as he was worried that people who subscribed to these concerning behaviors would take serious and violent action against him. Like Lenny, many of the families had to continually move since their addresses kept being posted online by those who thought they were crisis actors. This is by no means the full recount of what happened in the years following the shooting, but I think this is a good starting point that will give you enough context into the unimaginable torment that the families were going through. Many speculate that one of the main reasons for all of this was to make a massive profit. While Jones and his network aired episode after episode talking about the Sandy Hook hoax, they would advertise their different products, such as dietary supplements and merch. All of the false claims and abuse came to a head when the families of the victims went after him legally. I'm not going to go over any of the court proceedings because, again, I need to keep this as short and sweet as I can, but please do go out and find more information about this if you are interested. I did just want to mention, though, that Jones was caught in numerous lies throughout the court process, which I found pretty funny. In the end, Jones was ordered to pay $1.5 billion to the victims' families. There have been developments after the ruling, so again, please go do your own research if you'd like. Following the tragedy, Connecticut changed its gun laws. They strengthened the ban on assault weapons and began to require background checks for all firearms purchases. There is obviously a lot more to learn about this, so feel free to look into it for yourself. Now let's get into the positive things to come out of the tragedy. As mentioned before, many foundations and programs were established by the families following their relatives' deaths. Sandy Hook Promise was founded by multiple family members of the victims lost to Lanza's attack. Their website reads, quote, "Based in Newtown, Connecticut, our intent is to honor all victims of gun violence by turning our tragedy into a moment of transformation. By empowering youth to know the signs and uniting all people who value the protection of children, we can take meaningful actions in schools, homes, and communities to prevent gun violence and stop the tragic loss of life," unquote. This organization is home to a few different programs, which I will tell you about now. Start with Hello is a program with the purpose of teaching kids how to create a more inclusive and connected environment, with the hope to minimize social isolation. The Say Something program teaches students how to recognize the signs that someone is in crisis and is in need of help. They also have an anonymous reporting system to go along with this. Their Students Against Violence Everywhere, or Save Promise Club, is the largest student-led club dedicated to stopping violence in the U.S. According to the website, over 680 lives have been saved through their crisis intervention program. Over 280 acts of violence with a weapon have been averted, and they also claim that 16 planned school shootings have been prevented. Safe and Sound Schools was founded by Michelle Gay and Alyssa Parker, whose daughters Josephine and Emily were killed in the attack. The website reads, quote, "Our mission is to support school crisis prevention, response, and recovery, and to protect every school and every student every day. We have always and only focused on school safety. We are firm in our mission and firm in our resolve, and we will continue to advocate for and provide research-based education, tools, and resources to ensure the safest possible learning environment for the youth of our nation," unquote. They too have many programs, and also host a number of events to bring awareness to their mission. These two organizations are just some of the positive things to come out of this horrific event. As devastating as it is that it even happened in the first place, I am happy that there were some positive effects, which will hopefully go on to prevent such tragedies in the future. With that, we finally reached the end of this heartbreaking case.
Hi everyone! Thank you all for sticking around to the end of this video. We actually got incredibly lucky with the length of the script, as we didn't even know that the editing program we use caps out at 3 hours. Thankfully, the script just happened to be right around there anyway. However, we did have to shave a little bit off to make it fit. I'm sure you're surprised to hear my voice, and that there are actually 2 people running the channel. My fiance is the one who started it out initially, without even telling me at first. After I found out, and watched him do all the work by himself for quite a while, I decided to finally help out. Now, we write our scripts together, and then he edits alone. I'm usually the one making community posts, responding to comments, and sharing photos of our many animals, which I'm happy that you guys seem to love. We wanted to come on here personally to thank you all for the love and support that we've received since the channel has been up and running. I wish I could talk a little bit more, but like I said, we're very strapped for render time. Also, obviously, thank you so very much to our members for throwing a little bit of extra support our way. We truly appreciate it. Anyway, we hope to see you in the next one, but until then, stay safe everyone.